Today is May 8th, and this is the City of Frankfort Board of Commissioners May work session. It is 5 p.m., and I'll ask our city clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Present.
Commissioner Unger?
Present.
Commissioner Waldron?
Present.
Commissioner May?
Present.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Present. And we'll begin tonight with ceremonial and recognition. And we have a couple of proclamations. We're going to start with those real quick. This is the Historic Preservation Month and Frankfort Heritage Week. May 2023, we proclaim Historic Preservation Month, and May 7th through the 13th is Frankfort Heritage Week. Please be sure to check out the daily activities that are underway with that. Culminating Friday night, there will be a presentation at Liberty Hall as well with awards. Anybody else? Commissioner Waters?
I just wanted to take a moment of silence for Virginia Moore, could we please? She was in all of our households for a couple of years and helping spread the word and keeping everyone healthy with the governor and his Kentucky team. She, to me, became a part of everyone's life, and here in Frankfort and across Kentucky. And it's just a huge loss with her and for the deaf community as well, the hard of hearing community. And I would just like to take a moment of silence for her leadership and her leadership during COVID and just dedication. So, if you don't mind. Thank you. And Virginia will be missed by all.
Commissioner Unger?
I just wanted to highlight the awesome downtown derby celebration that we had this weekend. We had a lot of departments helping out with the city, so streets, solid waste, special projects, police, fire, and emergency management. And Dr. Ellie Haskin-Wagner, who is in the audience, she was amazing working with everybody and getting that trifecta race put together. And it was just a great time. Everyone had so much fun. Also, thanks to Tom Farmer with Walk Bike Frankfort, who was also really helpful out there. So it was a great time downtown.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Waters?
And I just wanted to add on to that, and thank you to the Kentucky State University basketball teams and track teams for coming down and also helping and volunteering. They were a huge asset to the little runs, the little races in the morning, so thank you to all of them. And also a shout out to Collier Higgs. He was the 2023 SIAC Elite 14 honors in baseball, and during his baseball career, he has led the entire baseball student athletes with a 4-point GPA at Kentucky State University. So super excited for him. And I guess we're super excited. We have three people who are up for the running of Kentucky State's new president. So it has now been moved on to the Board of Regents. So hopefully you guys will join them when they submit those dates for those interviews on campus. Thank you.
Any other ceremonial recognition?
I just want to say that prior to our next meeting, we will have several folks in the community, seniors graduating from high school. We have seniors who graduated from college, from Kentucky, and from Frankfort, and we're all very proud of them. We want them to enjoy themselves, be careful in doing so, but enjoy this time. As a dad of a kid who was a 2020 graduate, it was not a fun time, so little sister is shoving it in her face right now. So just enjoy it, because these are memories you'll always remember.
Anything else? Anyone? If not, we'll move on to citizens' comments. And we'll ask, when I call your name, if you'll come to the podium, state your name or organization, and 5-minute limit, and we may have some follow-up questions.
And I will give you a 1-minute warning and let you know when your 5 minutes is up.
Okay, and we have Ms. Lynn Bowers. Would you like to come forward? Welcome back.
Oh, it's good to be here and not sitting where you are. I think I started my political career right here and then moved there, and I'm back. I'm not going to be 5 minutes. I'm going to be 1 minute. I'm going to tell you that on behalf of myself and many of my neighbors and friends and citizens, we value yard waste pickup. A lot of us think that's way more important than hiring a marketing manager or let me back up and say, years ago when I was sitting where probably Katricia is, I kept pushing for assistant city manager because I came from the private sector where we were used to having that. But when I did that, when I put that motion out, we weren't cutting services. So I would just recommend that you think about getting the equipment, whatever the cost, and let the market take care of itself. Pay those people that do an excellent job with their worth and what they demand, and just please bring it back as quickly as possible. How many minutes did I go?
43 seconds.
Yay.
Good example. Great
Good
example.
job.
Thank you. Charles Booth.
Do I need to state my name?
Sure.
My name's Charles Boo. I'm a resident of Frankfort, Kentucky. And isn't it a wonderful place to live? First, I'd like to thank the mayor and the commissioners for all the hard work they do. A lot of times they don't get thanked enough. The city staff as well. I'd also like to thank the Public Works Department because there's a lot of tree limbs down from the wind and there's a lot of things that need to be picked up around town. And I'd like to emphasize that there's a fire risk with downed tree limbs, and in especially the downtown area where houses are very close together, that could be catastrophic. Enough said, I think everybody gets the point. Now I'm Charles Boo with Rebecca with Candies. Do I get 5 more minutes? Okay, we have a downed sign on East Main as you come down the hill just before the bridge. And it's been down for a little bit since the windstorm, I believe. And we're trying to get a replacement for that. Just want to make you aware of that. I'm sure we'll come to a resolution of that issue. The third item that I'd like to bring up as Charles Booth. I should have done that second, but so it is. The transportation center that we're getting ready to build. I'm wondering if we can co-locate assets and save the city some expenditures by utilizing the old YMCA for that as a facility. This was actually a suggestion from my daughter, Sarah. And I thought it was bright enough to bring up to the commission and to say, well, if we haven't thought of that, maybe we should think of that. Be expensive to tear it down, expensive to replace it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Anna White. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to use their 5 minutes. No, I will be fast. I'm Anna Whites. I'm here representing Kentucky Dance Academy, which is a downtown business and my daughter's dance school. I'm a proud mom. A little bit about KDA for those of you who don't have kids who dance. KDA is a huge supporter of downtown. KDA leases dance school space in the old Good Shepherd building. Pretty much has 2 floors now, supporting downtown. KDA uses the Grand for its shows instead of Kentucky State University, UK, Georgetown, Woodford County, all of which offered KDA free parking if they would pay for its theater. KDA caters food from downtown businesses for all its shows instead of having people bring in food from home. KDA uses Hewlett's Printing, which is essentially downtown on Home Street, instead of a chain for its 2,000 plus in marketing materials every show. KDA advertises in the State Journal year-round. KDA belongs to various Frankfort organizations. KDA provides 20 hours a month or more of free outreach to the library, local preschools, schools, and nursing homes, all in the Frankfort area. And KDA offers free or reduced cost classes to at least 50% of its dancers, probably more. My daughter doesn't keep an accurate track, and her treasurer, my son, is very cranky about that. But if somebody can't afford a class, a costume, or shoes, she just pays it herself. KDA's Spring Showcase was just a few weeks ago. It brought, in a 24-hour period, 2,200 or more dance audience members into downtown. Most of those came to more than one show. It brought 200 dancers aged 18 months to 18 years, including 10 special needs dancers. KDA has a blind dancer, 4 or 5 with cerebral palsy, deaf and hard of hearing, autistic, and developmental delays. So they're doing good works in those areas too. It brought 3 sound and light technicians to each show and 30 front of house folks. KDA knew that its show lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes. And so we reached out once we realized that and asked for an exception to parking to allow people to attend the show, say hello to their dancer afterwards, and then drive away. And we were denied that. Even if you arrived just before curtain and left without saying hello to any of the dancers, booked it as soon as the music ended, you would have exceeded the 2-hour parking limit. And some of our dancers, including our blind dancer who had very much difficulty with the sidewalks, and some of our parents who had up to 4 kids under the age of 6 and were transporting all those kids by themselves as solo parents with all their gear for 3 shows in one day, couldn't go very far. Parking out in front was a must or close. And so we asked for waivers of specific tickets for those folks. Parents, an assistant who kept everyone backstage, and somebody got sick and she didn't get replaced, so she could not move her car. She got a ticket. Our blind dancer's mom got a ticket. Our blind dancer's sister got a ticket when she brought her. And several of the parents of preschoolers also got tickets. We requested that those be waived because we don't think we should penalize businesses who come in for a one-time show. This isn't like the Derby Day events where you come and go and nothing lasts a set 2+ hours. This is a very unusual thing. I think Bill Cull with the Grand also made the same request because occasionally he has daytime events that last more than 2 hours, although I would venture to say there's probably only 1 or 2 of those a year. This is unusual. We also proposed that KDA would pay, and when KDA pays, that means Miss Amanda would pony up from her own salary parking passes for the dancers and their parents. We'd pay $5 and do it. But none of those have been received yet. We would ask that the commissioners look at this really unintended side effect of the parking policy and consider, A, waiving those second tickets, so my daughter or I don't pay those out of pocket, but also considering next time KDA has a show that lasts more than 2 hours, which won't be Nutcracker, but will probably be next spring, creating an exception by which folks who can't use the parking garage or don't know where it is because the signage is not good, and we did educate people on where it is, so more people know now, but consider an exception for that, particularly on a Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any discussion or questions?
I should say.
I just want to say, I think you have a couple of commissioners on here that are supporters of KDA. We do appreciate
Absolutely.
all that you all do for downtown, and we support our downtown businesses, and we appreciate the people you bring downtown. I think it is an unintended consequence, and that's something we can look at as far as the parking manual, which we're just working through it right now. So.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk about it tonight too.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Don Hale.
Thank you. My name is Dawn Hale. I won't take 5 minutes either. I basically wanted to talk about the budget. I really appreciate the fact that you all have put it online so the public can have access to it. I don't think it's the easiest thing in the world to read, but it's still there, and I appreciate that. I would hope that when you all are making the very difficult decisions that are going to be placed before you, and it is hard, I understand that, because there are a lot of people out there that are demanding a lot from you all, and so I understand the difficulty that you all are in. But I would hope that you would remember that one of the main purposes of local government is to provide services, basic services. Lynn Bowers talked about the trash pickup. I think that there are areas that can be cut that won't affect basic services, and I equate it sometimes with, with our personal budget. If we have less revenue or whatever, we cut Netflix before we cut the grocery bill. Well, I hope that, some of what I see you all doing is cutting the grocery bill and not Netflix. So I hope that you all would keep that in mind and be able to maintain the services that citizens are used to, and do the great job that Frankfort traditionally has done. And I appreciate you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Donna. And Lucas Stone.
Good evening, I'm Lucas Stone. I wanted to thank you all for your assistance in the past with issues that I've had. Thank you, Mayor. I've had quite a few conversations with a few people in dealing with that, and it's much improved, so thank you very much for that. In addition, I also, this evening, I work downtown. I'm a tradesman, and I've been trying really hard for about a month to deal with the parking situation, and managed to secure 3 parking tickets in a month's time. It's not very conducive to tradesmen. We can't park in the garage because of the limits of our work. I have hundreds of pounds of tools. This week I've been moving 100-pound doors. I have to bring them to the job site, to the entrance, carry them inside. I've tried to drop things off and park blocks away and still manage to get tickets. And I've been kind of going over the parking situation. I've talked with Robert Stevens through emails, and then my phone kind of died, so my conversation with him stopped. And actually the last thing I was in conversation with him about was that technology is not as reliable as talking to somebody in person like I'm doing right now. The parking signs that are up are the old signs. They state that you have limited 2-hour parking. They don't state anywhere downtown that you'll get a ticket if you're over 2 hours. There's no way for me to pay for parking on the street. I can't put money in a meter and pay for parking during the day. My only option is to be penalized. And then if you go to pay for a ticket, the only options that you have presently are to pay through an app, and I don't do anything like that on my telephone. I don't even know how to download an app, or to pay with a credit card by calling a phone number, and I don't pay any bills by credit card. I pay everything in person or with a check. The other thing about the tickets, they state they're $10. If you try to pay, there's a $2.50 processing fee, which you find out when you're trying to pay for. So the ticket is actually $12.50. There are no signs that tell you if you're over 2 hours you're going to get a ticket, that you'll be in violation. That's not stated anywhere. There's no signs anywhere except on the parking garage that tells you you can park in the parking garage. As far as I can tell, there are presently no options to get parking passes long term. You can secure a temporary loading pass, but you have to go to the office. And fortunately, somebody found out where the office was and secured this for me the other day. In addition, we found out I have a coworker that moved his van and got a ticket after he moved it. He was not in violation. We have about 4 witnesses to that. So the tickets are totally at the discretion of the people walking the beat. And if you get a ticket in that circumstance, he has no way, and he doesn't know how he can contest it. We know he didn't deserve the ticket. There's 4 or 5 witnesses to it. He's got photographic proof on his telephone, but he doesn't have anybody to talk to about that. So he's looking at paying a ticket he didn't really earn. I think that's everything that I've gone over. And I've discussed this with several people. What we need is an option to pay in advance so that I can park on the street without getting tickets, or parking right there. And as far as the tickets that I've got, I really feel like if I'm working downtown, I'm walking downtown, I'm parking downtown, I should be able to walk right in the clerk's office like I did the other day with my registration and go ahead and pay these tickets, and not have to pay a $2.50 processing fee to some company somewhere outside of our community. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you again for your help in the past. I will say, I feel very welcome here, I feel very listened to here, and I'm very proud to be a part of this community with people like you in charge. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
In regards to your trade, you said you were moving 100-pound doors.
Yes.
How tall is your truck? Is that an issue as well, getting in and out? Like, what is your
My particular
truck?
will fit in the parking garage, and for a while I did use the parking garage.
Okay, so it will fit.
Most of the tradesmen that I work with have vehicles that are much larger than mine.
Okay.
if you look at any Whitehead, Hancock, and they're working on our project, if you look at almost any vehicle that they drive, almost any standard work van that has ladder racks on top, it will not fit in that parking garage. And the bottom line for me, even though my vehicle fits in there, what I carry and what I need, I parked all the way down on Wilkerson Boulevard, got back to my job site, and didn't have my tape measure. I had to go all the way back down there, you know, and that's, once in a while, if that happens, that's not a big deal. But all day long, I constantly have to remember what's in my truck, what I've got on my job site. It's not convenient for me to walk 2 blocks every time I need something. So, and there are 40 men working on my project.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Okay, Robin Antonucci and Ellie Haskman.
Hello. First and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for their support and help and enthusiasm with the Downtown Derby celebration. It was awesome, and we did the Triple Crown for the first time ever, and the community support and the weather, just everything cooperated and was fantastic. And really and truly, our community partners made it happen. I want to second Commissioner Unger's statements at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you, thank you, thank you to Walk Bike Frankfort and to Visit Frankfort for their partnership and planning abilities. And Rebecca Ruth too, oh my gosh, the bourbon balls. Ah, yes, we just have great partners and we're really, really appreciative. Now over to Robin.
So, we wanted to recognize one of your own for her valor and bravery and literally taking one for the team during the Pedal for the Posies. We are bestowing upon Commissioner Waldridge the roses, not a blanket.
You guys are
close,
awesome.
and a Purple Heart.
Purple Heart.
Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Drying, so be careful.
Oh, it's awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. It was so much fun, and I will have to say, it's all fun. I had to text Robin to let her know that I had broken my leg, and she was like, "What?" And because I was actually leaving downtown very happily, saying, "Hey, I'm going back home," and then Robin was like, "Hey, come and do Run for the Posies," and I'm like, "Okay, sure, sign me up for whatever. Let's go do it." And I slipped and fell right in front of everyone, and I broke my fibula and jumped right back up on the bike and continued on because I didn't want to put a damper on the downtown events and step aside. And no one knew until well after the fact because I got up and continued to pedal. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate Bree and Sam with the EMS and working with me and the officers and people that really kept it low key. I did not want any attention on me whatsoever because it was just such a good vibe, and I just really pushed off to the side. So I thank you guys. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. And my son said, what did he say when I got home? He was like, "What are they going to do with the most hardworking person in Frankfurt, most hardworking woman in Frankfurt?" And I was like, "Oh, thanks, son. I appreciate that." But it's fun. I'm going to keep being around, and I'm here and in pain, but you'll see me waddle around for the next 6 weeks probably. So thank you.
Next, finally, we have Rich Rosen. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I am Richard Rosen. I live in downtown Frankfurt. In the newspaper, I saw the article that the city was cutting services on picking up large items and yard waste, and it said it was suspended. No information as far as how long the suspension is going to last or how long it's projected to last. So to me, this is a big issue, and I thought it might be to others. So I put a letter in the newspaper to see what kind of support it would bring, and it brought a lot. I've gotten a lot of responses, all of which have been positive. I would hope that you as commissioners and mayor have received some input as well from the community. What my letter to the my guest column said was, this is a basic service, okay? And I know you guys have to make some difficult decisions, as far as how our tax dollars and fees are spent. But you need to prioritize them, and the basic services cannot be cut in the way that you have cut them. I think you owe the community restoration of those services as soon as possible. I think you owe the community an explanation on what is happening, what has happened to cause this, what is being done to fix it when you project that the problem will be fixed. And I think you need to get that word out. And that's why I wanted to speak. I think there's some people who don't read the paper. They maybe even haven't heard that yard waste is not going to be picked up anymore. So I wanted to also come to you and address it on Cable 10. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's on the agenda. And coming right, if no other citizens' comments, we'll go to staff reports.
Thank you. I want to welcome Eric Cockley to come up and discuss how our recent parking changes and the process if the BOC would like to make changes to the parking manual that was adopted last year.
Evening, everybody. So we're a little over 2 months into active on-street parking enforcement. And we're still, as you all know, in sort of our infancy and getting folks to adjust their behavior. And obviously, as we continue to go forward, looking at how we're doing this and what adjustments need to be made. So we've been seeing kind of a stable amount of ticketing, generally in the number of like 10 to 12 a day is what my operator tells me, but some days are much less. For example, this past Friday, he said they only issued 2 tickets all day. 110 of those tickets that we've issued have been paid. We're right now getting about a 50% payment rate, which I'm told is pretty good compared to national average. And we're seeing, at the very least, anecdotally, garage use picking up. So hopefully we can continue on that. We have one relatively large adjacent tenant we expect in the coming months to start leasing a fairly large number of spaces in the garage. That'll be a new customer for us, and hopefully can continue encouraging folks to use that, both itinerant and monthly parkers, so that the garage can at some point be sustainable, at least itself. Beyond that, I mean, I'll open the floor to questions. Like I said, we've gone a couple of months. You know, please forward any concerns you've got. I speak with our parking operator, like it or not, almost every day about one thing or another. So as we're sort of learning and growing through the program, we're trying to, you know, keep in touch so we can see how we're going to address issues as they come up, make sure we kind of learn each other until we can kind of cut them more loose and independent in doing those things. So,
I have a couple of things if you want. Okay. The $2.50 fee, because I know we're not making a whole bunch of money from this whole process. And so being that we're not making a whole lot of money to help our community, what is the $2.50 service fee for? That's my first question.
So we don't see that $2.50, and neither does Laz Parking. That $2.50 is standard service fee from the software and equipment operator they use.
Okay. My second issue is in regards to Saturday. So we're still enforcing on Saturday. I know when this came to us, I'd asked for it not to be enforced on Saturday, but we said that we could come back at any time to revisit that. And so I guess with that, I would like to make the motion not to enforce on Saturday parking. And I say that in support that this Saturday was Derby. And if we're going to ticket for a dance site on a Saturday or whatever day, I should have gotten a ticket on Saturday for Derby because I was parked there more than 2 hours. And if we can do it for the governor's event or anyone else's, we need to be fair across the board for our community. So with that being said, I would like to make the motion to drop Saturday enforcement and see how that works in our community for the downtown area. They were not ticketing on Saturday. If so, I didn't, and my son did not get a ticket.
I would second that motion.
But I think that's what the businesses are wanting, and I think that will help in getting us moving in the right direction.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and so now we can talk about the discussion on the Saturday enforcement. Let me start by, are there going to be other recommended changes that we're gonna, or is this something we do need to have on a voting meeting? Are there gonna be other changes to the manual before we?
If I
we're
may,
gonna do it piecemeal.
no, if I may, I think there will be additional changes as things come along. However, this one is fairly significant and it's timely. Our next voting meeting isn't for another, 2 weeks, and every weekend now that this starts back up, we are going to incur these issues. And I will say, Mr. Cockley, I read your email to all of us, and I understand that, when you said I'm not quite sure what the, how to respond because I'm not aware what those complaints were.
Right.
I think it was pretty clear by the time that I sent the message out that Mrs. White's and others had reached out to the city related to the ticketing on that Saturday night. That was a large event. There was several thousand people that were in downtown Frankfort on a Saturday, and I think that we are doing ourselves a disservice by allowing that. And this is no fault on anybody. This is just something we have to figure out, what works and what doesn't. And we've gone years with haphazard ticketing and, no real enforcement mechanism. And I think this is something that we just saw immediately and we probably need to immediately fix.
Yes.
Can I ask, so the committee, the parking advisory committee that came up with the recommendations, I'm sure they had a discussion about Saturday or not. What was the reasoning to
there was some
keep the
feeling from
Saturday?
some of the parking advisory group members that they thought they were downtown businesses that wanted enforcement so that those parking spaces would turn over, because while we may shut down for business on Friday, afternoon, those businesses are open on Saturday. That's still a business day. And so that was kind of the rationale. But we had a lengthy debate Monday, Friday, Monday, Saturday, because we had a whole bunch of signage that was inconsistent around downtown. So we ended up on Monday, Saturday. Obviously, we had the street department go out and change all of that signage to reflect that reality. So I would just mention again to the board, we're 2 months in, and if we change Saturday now, we've got another week of work from the street department to either change out those signs. I don't know if they can alter them in some way without having to get new signs. And all that, and we had planned on, once we get 2-3 months in and we have a feel for what's working, what's not working, scheduling hopefully in June another parking advisory group meeting to hear feedback from those folks for starters, because they're all downtown parking stakeholders and stakeholder organizations, and to see what those things are that need to be changed, but to try to do that in a deliberate way, which gives us time to make those changes if necessary. And make sure that we're not doing so in a manner that's going to confuse anybody about what the rules are. So, you mentioned, treating everybody equally, and that's been a big part. And it kind of makes, myself and the parking operator look like the sort of cold administrators, but we've tried very much to not do cutouts for people to get special privileges. And while unfortunately that means that some people do in fact get tickets, which is not our goal, it means that we all have to adjust our behavior in some way, So we work very hard not to, whether it's funeral homes, churches, the dance academy, things of that nature. We've tried to toe the line, and if we're going to do this, then we do it. And in the hopes that after a few months of everybody kind of getting on board, that we hopefully aren't issuing very many tickets at all.
So I'm a word person. So your key word was the committee thought that's what the businesses wanted. So your key word in that was thought. So were the businesses not communicated, or do we have a definite answer that they did want it on Saturday or they didn't want it on Saturday? Because the key word in your answer to the mayor was thought. So when I look at that, I feel like that maybe that was something that the people in the committee, and was that represented by business owners? Because I know when we started moving forward, I met with several business owners downtown, and they really wanted that. That's why I brought it up in the reading of that, saying we really need to think about this. And we said that we could go back and change it as to why I'm making this motion now, because we do have issues on Saturday. And either way, we're going to have parking enforcement. So it's not going to be pleased and praised by everyone by all means. But I think our big issue is Saturday, and just cutting out Saturday I think would help. But the key word is thought. And so where did you get your information from the business owners that they did they're okay for it on
So-
Saturday.
So those organizations that represent those business owners, DFI, the Chamber of Commerce, KCDC, all
Okay.
sat on and participated in our parking advisory group.
Okay.
Had the representatives of those organizations told us, no, don't you dare, I'm hearing from all the merchants that we don't want it on Saturdays, don't do it, we wouldn't have done it.
Right.
We didn't hear that.
I think that might be part of the problem because we have businesses in downtown that say they don't ever talk to DFI or hear from KCDC, and I think that therein lies a significant issue. You know, the other thing that I'll add on to what Commissioner Walders just said was that, you know, I'm looking at the Parking Advisory Committee here, and of the 16 people, 11 of them are government employees. And, you know, quite honestly, I think that if we're going to have a Parking Advisory Committee, we need to have a majority of those being downtown business individuals. And I think that we do need leadership like yourself, Mr. Cockley, to be able to help organize these things. But at the same time, if we're having representative organizations that are saying, we believe that this is what they want, yet we are hearing that we don't ever talk to those people, you know, that's a problem. I think it's important that when we have citizens who come to us, come to the city with legitimate concerns that come afterwards, that's something we should take into consideration, especially as quickly as this happened. I fully agree with you that, look, we're just a couple months into this, we'll have to change signage. I'm all for that. We've wasted money on more frivolous things in this town. But when it comes to, you know, things of this nature, you know, I'm a little frustrated, and I stated my frustration in an email to the city manager that obviously made its way to you, Mr. Cockley, which was that, you know, there's a parking advisory committee, then there is your office. Actually, let me back up. There's the parking advisory committee, then there's the senior project manager at LAS, Robert Stevens, then there's you, Mr. Cockley, and then there's the city manager, and then it comes to the city commission. So there's about 4 levels of insulation. And while I agree with you that it's great that the different city offices want to insulate us from issues and questions and concerns like this, it's never going to happen. I mean, you can put 17 layers. They're always going to call us. They're always going to show up and talk to us at churches. And these are issues that we have to address. And so I'm a little concerned that there's 4 levels of bureaucracy before the city commission can make a decision. And in fact, when we talk later about, you know, dealing with whether we enforce certain tickets or not, we can talk about those administrative orders. But in this particular case, I think we may need to look at the administrative structure.
We have a motion on the Saturday parking right now, and that's the discussion on Saturday parking. So is there a city manager?
I would just like to offer this up to the Board of Commissioners and thinking about this one change that you all would like to make, that it might be more beneficial if there's other changes, as Commissioner Thompson had alluded to and others may have discussed. Instead of multiple going back and forth to update the parking manual and then update the ordinance, that it could be better for our staff and all of us working together, that if the number of issues that you would like the staff to consider with the parking advisory group and to make those changes, that they all be grouped together, because going back and forth, it is, as Eric had said, it could be confusing for people if things keep changing. So if there's a number of issues you'd like to instruct the staff to revise, I would just recommend like putting them all in a group together so we can address them all at once.
And I think that's what my question was earlier. If we're there's going to be others that we're going to do. Let's just do it all at once. Because I'm in favor of the no Saturday enforcement.
Okay, great. My motion still stands.
Until we get to a point where that is an issue. So yes, Commissioner May.
I just want to share my thoughts on it, the whole process a little bit. And when I'm speaking here, I'm not speaking about whether or not I agree that KDA should or shouldn't have gotten tickets that particular day, or if I support KDA or anything like that. I'm looking at this from the functionality standpoint of an organization and what we set out to do and what the intent was to do and where that started and the point of it. And I'm also thinking about how in this community we like to compare ourselves a lot. We hear, well, we want more things like downtown Lexington and downtown Louisville, and I think to myself when I go to the Yum Center for an event, my parking is going to be, there's always going to be large events going on at these venues. And if we want to grow, we're always going to have this problem, and any larger community deals with it and addressing it this way, taking the first step. It's not going to be a free-for-all out in the streets when it comes to parking. So we got to start somewhere. With Saturday, I've heard both. I've heard absolutely pull it back immediately. This is not what we wanted. I've also heard people say I tried to go down to Hoggies on that same day and just wanted to go in and get ice cream and I couldn't. They just wanted to go up, get into one of our local businesses, and leave. So there's two sides to it, that we're going to have to obviously consider. And I do think, there are other ways that we can accommodate moving forward. I don't know where the breakdown was exactly and why we couldn't accommodate requests for load-in, load-outs or anything like that. But that certainly, it seems like would help, accommodate those requests. Again, back to, overall expectations. Yeah, it would be nice for anyone who's going to an event with thousands of people to get right out of your car and park. But the reality, I don't know where you can do that. I mean, for an event like that.
Well, I can do it in Louisville. I get on an app and I just add more time to my. But
right. So that that's where those things that we can exactly. And in terms of having a space left open as an available drop-off pickup spot for a particular event is totally achievable. I believe we did something to that effect this weekend. To help out Bill Cole and the Grand while we had the street shut down and everything else. I think the street department was nice enough to work on that. So. Those things can be doable for special events. As it relates to, one spot as a loading zone. Now, trying to pick events to then exempt from parking requirements, beyond the fact that I think it's a bad idea, because we want to be equal for everybody so we all learn the ropes and know how to operate in the system. We also, just from a technical standpoint, the way I understand the equipment that our operators use, would make it very difficult to do that because they would need to know license plate numbers that they're supposed to exempt out of the system to not give tickets when they're monitoring. And so functionally it would be very problematic.
So I guess my question is about the process. If we're going forward, if we make this change today, then are we going to, is the commission now going to be the one who makes all the changes going forward, or are we still going to rely on the input from the parking advisory committee? I think that's mine's more about the process now, because I like the idea of no Saturday enforcement, but are we the ones to do this going forward? And if we vote on this today, then I guess.
So obviously you all can choose to change an ordinance or policy however you see fit. We've arranged it in the ordinance that you all have passed to have this parking advisory group serve as a sounding board and a stakeholder group, in hopes that it would actually be less bureaucratic and more nimble to be able to change things and then just update you all with the changes that we made, which would give you an opportunity at that time, if let's say we were proposing to change no Saturday parking, that you'd have an opportunity to say, if you had an issue with that change, that you could advise us, no, we're not going to do that. But to the board's discretion, if you want to disband the parking advisory group and change the ordinance and start making these decisions directly about the administration, that's a decision that you all can make. I'll just keep repeating, we're a few months into this. We haven't even had an opportunity to have the first go back to the parking advisory group and have them tell me all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you all may be entirely right, and we may schedule that meeting in June, and I may hear from all those folks and that Saturday is absolutely not necessary and the businesses don't want it, and we can make those changes. That's the way it's structured now. I think there's some good things about that.
Commissioner Walker?
Do we get like how many tickets, like how many tickets in a day? Like you just had tickets, you had numbers of tickets. How many tickets were given out on Saturday?
I don't know that information at the time.
Do you feel tickets were given out on Saturday?
Or we're supposed to be conducting parking enforcement on Saturday, so you would imagine.
Okay, that's all I'm saying, Mayor. There were people all downtown, and I haven't had one complaint from this weekend that there were tickets out. So I understand it was Derby things, but again, it was a Derby celebration, an event that sort of makes me think, oh, well, I can come and park. I didn't get a ticket when I parked there 3 hours last Saturday for Derby, so now I'm parked there, and then I come back out for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and now I've got a ticket. Hold on, I just parked there last Saturday. I don't think that there were any tickets given in our downtown last Saturday.
There
I
was
could not
no
be
instruction to anyone not to give tickets. I'm
Okay.
sure they were supposed to enforce.
I
those
understand
things.
that, but that's my clarity. I'm not fond of this parking situation, which you and the city manager know. I'm not fond of this little director with the parking guy at all. But what I can say, that's not what I'm saying, that we're doing it. What I'm saying is, if they're going to be consistent in giving out parking tickets and certain things, then they need to be consistent. We hired them to do a job. So there should have been many tickets this weekend, hypothetically, because of that. But if they're not going to show up and do their job, I need to know that they showed up and did their job this weekend. Because if they didn't, that's an issue with our contract, correct? They should have been in our downtown handing out tickets. I didn't see one ticket on not a one car this weekend. So what else are they not doing right? I'm just saying, if you're going to be a contract and we have you contracted, do your job. But Saturday, anyone that parked downtown for more than 2 hours did not get a ticket. As far as I'm concerned, with everybody that parked by me, near me, I never saw any tickets in the time that I was down there, and I was down there for more than 3 hours. I should have been ticketed. But I'm just saying, if we can do it for them, that's what I'm saying. I think Saturday is the issue day. So I understand there may be some more changes later on in your update of that particular committee. I give you that. Things may change. But this one date change, to me, needs to be made now, because of all the issues that we're having with the Saturday date. And I think that that could be easy. The rest of it is Monday through Friday. Let's talk about the weeds later and do all that, and we can submit all those together. But taking Saturday off, to me, I think helps us in the issue with the community. It helps us with ongoing tickets. I don't know how many of us would want to get up in the middle of our children's ballet saying, oh, daughter, I'll catch you later. I'm going to go out and move my car, and think that that's okay. I mean, I'm supportive of the dance group, but honestly, if it's going to last more than 2 hours, that means she now has to change everything to say that her show is going to be an hour and a half for that Saturday, or what have you. I do appreciate that she is pushing people to the parking garage, because we are getting that out there. So I do appreciate that, but I just think that we just need to be fair across the board, and I just think taking Saturdays away, I think will help move us in the right direction and ease things.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Call the
for the
question.
vote. Please, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
No, and I do want to explain my vote. I would like to wait until the parking advisory committee meets in June. We have just gotten started with this. I might be supportive of lifting the Saturday, but not at the moment. Because I feel like, we've just started enforcement. Some people are just finding out about it. And honestly, there are a couple things that I would like to discuss that I might also want to change. So I don't want to create this issue for our staff to make the change right now, and then maybe more in the near future. So a no for now.
Commissioner Waldridge?
I'm a yes, and that's because I think that taking Saturdays will help us a great deal in moving forward and implementing other things. And then if there are other changes in June, that we can do that, because who's to say that there's not going to be other hiccups and us not get to it in June, because we're notorious for dragging things out and not getting done things in a great time for our community sometimes. So I want to do it. Yes.
Commissioner May?
I'm a no. I'd like to explain my vote, please. Not that I foresee myself necessarily disagreeing with taking Saturday enforcement away. I also would like to, for the purpose of the procedure here, let the committee come back together and make the decision there and bring back their findings. I think we'll find a solution here. But for now, and for that reason, just to let the process continue, I'm a no.
Mayor Wilkerson.
And on this one, I'm gonna be a yes, because this is an opportunity. This is the one part of the parking ordinance, the manual, that I have not been in agreement with. Having said that, I do respect the process, and I do respect what the Parking Advisory Committee has done. There were people on the committee that represented business interests. Why it still got through this Saturday, I don't know. Maybe they just weren't heard. Maybe I don't know, maybe they didn't have proper representation.
Right.
But they were represented, and I'm not sure what happened there. Having said that, though, this is the one thing that I would have changed, and I'm not likely to change another. So this is a yes, and I still want the parking enforcement, or the Parking Advisory Committee to meet. But I'm not likely to change anything from our dais unless it's a recommendation from the committee.
I would agree.
May I make a comment
It's
about that?
passed.
I understand it's
No
passed.
discussion. All right. Thank you.
Next staff report, we have Katie Beard provide us an update on solid waste, our current challenges in staffing, and some proposed solutions to address this issue.
Good evening. Hopefully this will be a brief update for you all. Solid waste advertised over the last week that we're going to have to temporarily suspend some services. So that is why we're here, giving you an update on how we got here and how long we think we might be here and what we're going to do to get back to normal. So what are our services? Trash and recycling is still as normal. Citizens can still pay for a bulk pickup. The services that are temporarily suspended include free bulky items, which we normally pick up on your normal trash day, a mattress, a chair, a table, and then limbs, brush, and yard waste. Some of the things that people can still do to get rid of these items are pay for a bulk pickup. They can call us and schedule that. They can use their yard waste, lawn waste, grass clippings, that type of thing for compost. They can, not the chosen option, but they can place it in their trash cart if they have no other options. They can dispose of it at Yard Waste Wednesday if they have a way to do that and get it to the Lewis Ferry location on a Wednesday morning. And then there is the option of a private tree service to remove large limbs and trees. And I just wanted to remind the community that if a contractor takes down a tree on your property, they're required to remove that. By ordinance, the city does not pick up trees removed by contractors. So some of the things that led us to this decision is we have a backlog of work requests in these areas. As I tell people who call in, and they're, rightly so, very frustrated that we've gotten behind, I tell them it was the perfect storm, literally, because this windstorm happened, this unprecedented windstorm for our area happened right when our staff numbers were dropping and equipment was failing. So it's just led us to have a backlog of 30 cart deliveries. That's if somebody's lost or broken a cart. 40 cart exchanges or upgrades where they need a bigger cart, they pay for it. 40 brush pickup. And these date right now, we're caught up through, I believe, April 17th is what I looked at today right before the meeting. So we're still several weeks behind. And there are others who have not called in to get on that list. But we have noted, I think there was 65 on the list that we had noted that we hadn't picked up altogether. Ones that had called and reported it and ones that had not. So if they were on the list, if they had called in as of this past Friday, we will pick up. That delay, that temporarily suspension started today, but if they were already on the list, we're going to go ahead and pick those up. Another thing that's led, as I mentioned, is staffing. We have 18 authorized positions. We currently have 13 full-time employees in the department, in the division of the Public Works Department. 5 vacancies in solid waste, 4 on medical leave with injuries, So that leaves us 9 current working employees, including our superintendent and assistant superintendent. They are driving trucks every day. The assistant superintendent is driving every day. The superintendent, Byron, delivered 25 carts on Friday by himself. So they are jumping in and working along with the guys. We are borrowing staff members from Streets and Floodwall to drive, as well as ride on the back of the truck. And just another note, we used to have 6 to 8 daily inmates to help us, and we don't have that program anymore due to staff shortages with the jail. So kind of a problem across the board for everyone. So what we're doing is hoping to, we've done some interviews and we've got 3 people committed to start tomorrow. That's going to help us start to fill the gap. We have another posting open right now that closes on Wednesday. We've got some more applicants to interview next week. And we've been discussing with HR and the city manager, how can we increase our starting pay for these positions to help recruit and retain these people. And there's one thing that I didn't put on here. Safety is an issue. I mentioned we have 4 injuries. So we're really going to focus on safety education and safety enforcement so that we can minimize that part of our problem as well. As far as our services and catching up on those, like I said, we have over 100 work orders outstanding right now. Mondays we have our staff available to catch up. We don't have a normal scheduled route on Mondays. That's our day for cleaning vehicles and cleaning around the office and doing maintenance on vehicles and catching up on these things like delivering carts and picking up brush. So we're using that. We've got, like I said, a superintendent jumping in and helping. We've considered options such as a Saturday overtime option or contracting with the tree service to pick up the brush so that would free us up to focus on the carts and our other services. So I've spoken with Woodland Tree Service since the city already has a contract. They're looking at their schedule, looking at prices to see what they can do to help us out. So in the future, I think we're going to have to, even when we get back up to full staff, we might consider scheduling all of these services, whether they're a paid service or a free service, such as one bulky item might cost you $25 to dispose of. It may remain free. These are things we're just discussing. Yard waste may remain free, but you have to call in and schedule it. That way we can manage the workload and we won't have 50 people, setting their stuff out and waiting for 6 weeks to get it picked up. We can give them a better timeline. Wait until 2 weeks from now to put your stuff out so that we can manage that better. So these are just some things, again, brainstorming, thinking of how can we make this work and make it sustainable for us. So those are the things we hope to do very soon. We want to limit this. I can't say, by June 15th we'll be good, but I'm hoping to get our staff numbers up as well as catch up on this backlog, and then we'll be able to reinstate the services. Hopefully it's a very short-term problem, but yeah, we may require scheduling those pickups and reinstate the yard waste like normal possibly. So that is it, very brief. I know people have lots of questions and people are getting very frustrated. I hope within the next couple of weeks to have some better answers and make some better progress.
Commissioner Thompson?
Who made the decision to suspend these services?
We discussed it between myself and the deputy director and the superintendent of solid waste, and we made the recommendation to the city manager. And I believe at that point she concurred and emailed the commission at that point.
Was there, prior to this discussion, was there any consideration that the suspending of these services would put forth any type of agenda with regard to the requirement of individuals to pay a waste management fee.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. Was there any consideration that this would encourage a
Yes.
fee to be approved?
Yes.
No, that wasn't.
That was never discussed?
No.
Okay. With regard to, you said that there were some options that people had. One of them you mentioned that they could pay for bulk pickup. How much is it if someone wanted to schedule and pay for bulk pickup?
They can call in and they can get 10 carts delivered for $50. They can set out unlimited bags of trash for $100.
Okay. So as I'm looking at the our ordinance here, it specifically says that the city, under section 50-02, it says the city shall collect residential waste when properly containerized and placed adjacent to a publicly maintained street in a manner and a quantity that does not create a hazard to traffic. And it goes on to say the city shall not collect waste from apartment or condominium buildings or provide any services to any businesses. At any time, was there a discussion of keeping these services? Any options to keep these services going?
Yes, I mean, we wanted to, we kind of put this off as long as we could until we were somewhat desperate. I mean, we kept hoping that we were going to get these positions filled and get caught up, and it just didn't happen week after week, and so we felt like we've got to do something. We've got to draw the line somewhere, and that's what we made that recommendation.
If I may add also, actually during the pandemic, we used Crown Services, we used temporary staffing, but actually after one of their temporary employees was injured, they no longer allow us to use them for these services, so we are out of options. We're advertising, we've talked to everybody in town, Thornhill, you name it, churches, people, anybody who knows, and as Katie said, we try to hold on as long as we can, but if we don't have the people as a safety measure for our staff, we had to temporarily suspend services.
I don't have questions. I want to spread it around a little bit. Okay. Commissioner? Go ahead, Ben.
The only thing, I mean, to follow up on the temporary services, that was my question, so thank you for answering that before, but are there anything, there wasn't anything that we're doing now that you could see another temp, like Kelly Services, nobody will come in and do like the cart drop-offs or anything, they just will not. Those types of things, not even just right on the back of the truck, but something that somebody's doing that we could say, hey, person A, instead of going and doing this, we'll temp this out.
Yeah.
Now you can get back on the truck.
Right. We've had our engineering tech, Ray Richardson, delivering carts.
Right.
We've had a couple of street department employees, the superintendent has volunteered to provide them later this week or next week to help out. So we've had a few staff members kind of redirected to help out. But again, we've got to have the equipment. We can't, we can have 10 drivers, but we only got 3 trucks and 3 trailers. So that's kind of limiting as well, is our equipment. And it being used on other job sites and things like that. So we're trying to work that out as best we can to limit any outside cost.
One follow-up there to kind of simplify it in my head. They will not allow a temp worker to step into solid waste department, period, no matter what they're doing. They won't.
Crown Services will not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Wells?
Were you
Mm-hmm.
finished? Yep. Your follow-up? Okay.
Thanks.
So let me think this through. So in this, the bags, you said that it was $100 for unlimited bags.
Yes.
And so is that our trash bags, the city trash bags, or is that any trash bags?
That's just any trash bags.
And they have to call and pay that $100 in order to get that.
Right. That's kind of like our, like when we do a free cleanup week, it can be in any bag. The overflow bags are still an option. I failed to put that on here. That's still an option too. We'll pick those up on the normal trash day.
And I know you and I spoke at the end of last week in regards to this and some of this with the brush pickup, and I'm glad that you were able to talk with our tree service. Is there any other, are we able to open it up to see if there's any other local places that could also help pick up this brush, and then let them know, like, we can charge by the truckload to get it and dump it wherever that location is? Also, my concern is the injuries. Is there a reason for injuries? Are people just not, is it because we're pulling from other departments and people getting injured? Like, that really bothers me. And then you said safety education. How long does it take for these new people coming on Tuesday? And then how long does it take for them to get trained appropriately that they're not going to be injured? And it just really concerns me on how many people are out injured and what are those injuries? And is it because they're overworked or doing things that are strenuous that, what do those injuries look like?
We've got lots of shoulder and back issues related to lifting. And we don't have cameras. You all recently approved a camera purchase so that we can go back and watch videos and see, were they bending and lifting? Were they being safe? Were they doing it appropriately? So we don't have that. But we do know that it was related to lifting on the job. So yes, it's concerning to have that, and we want to address it.
If I can just hop in for a second here, because I know we're talking about injuries on the job. I'm not sure if there are any that are still open or there's some protection there that we might need to just kind of leave it at that, and maybe we can find out some more information about that, Commissioner. Absolutely.
Commissioner Unger?
So I was just wondering, for the people that maybe don't read the State Journal, don't watch our meetings, and they find out their yard waste is not being picked up this week. How are we going to handle that? Are we going to put notes out on cans and say, no, we can't pick this up, make a call? Or how are we going to handle that?
Yeah, those will be tagged.
Door to door. Because I know that it takes a long time to get out, write a note, and place it on the bin. Sorry.
Yeah, Byron could probably answer that better, but that's my understanding, is that we will be tagging them, and if they, call the number, we'll give them the options of what they can do to get it picked up the following week.
What was your deadline for that? What was your deadline for the windstorm tree to put out? Was there a deadline for
May 5th, just as long as we knew by May 5th that it was out there, then we would pick it up this week.
So, do we have the equipment budgeted in the proposed budget for next year to handle what we need?
Yeah, we've got, we had broken down equipment that has been repaired. We always have a new garbage truck in the budget each year, and I believe we had a pickup truck as well in the budget for next year.
Is that enough to get us back to full speed?
Yes. Yeah, we should be able to. It's
if we had the employees.
Right, it's the employees more than anything. As long as we get caught up, then we do have the equipment to stay caught up.
And then if we had the full staff right now, or if we still had the jail inmates, would we be suspending the trash pickup? Or
I would not think so. I would not anticipate suspending services with a full 18 employees.
So this is, I think for the public, this is temporary. We're not
Right.
saying we're never going to do this again. This is just a temporary freeze. And then I think Commissioner Waldridge asked that, you mentioned woodland tree service. Is that a possibility that we would contract with somebody like that to do the yard waste?
Yeah, I talked to them just because the city already has a contract with them, and we can reach out to others for some cost comparison. But this would be also a temporary thing to just get us through this push and get that caught up so that we don't have to continue to contract out services.
Any objection from the board and staff researching that to see if that could be a solution temporary? See what the cost is. At least get the yard waste, right?
I think it should be across the board. I mean, quite honestly, the county has 22,000 residents. We have 29,000 residents. They have much greater area to encompass. So you're talking significantly longer rides, but you're also talking about, if you live out in the county, you tend to have more garbage on the average, and they contract out the entire process. And so, I think, let me ask you this: what's a full cadre of individuals? Like, how many people do you need to be fully staffed?
18,
And how many do you have right now?
13.
Well, 9, because 4.
We have 9
working.
So we have 9. So we have 50% of what it is.
Right.
And what's the starting pay for that
We're
position?
at 1703 right now.
Yeah.
1703 right now. So any of you high school graduates that are getting ready to come out of school, you want to make $17 an hour, go ahead and put your application in. There's 9 positions open. Okay? I think my concern is that we did wait until we were at mission critical stage. I think it smacks with the idea that we are doing this at the same time that we are later on tonight going to talk about a solid waste fee. That concerns me. But I will go back to my initial comment that I wasn't allowed to say a little earlier, was that under 83A150, all executive and legislative authority flows to the Board of Commission. We are a city manager form of government. The city manager makes suggestions and she has the ability to run the city. But when it comes to something like providing services, an everyday service, that's something I believe that has to come before the city commission before we simply cut it off. And while I 100% understand when we're in a financial bind and we have to make decisions like that, because we're hemorrhaging money or we don't have enough people, that's something that needs to come to us. That needs to be on us, because we're going to get blamed for it anyway. So we might as well be the ones to be able to discuss it. And I'm not putting anything on you or the city manager right now. I'm just saying that under the statute, that executive authority to cancel a service lies directly on us. So I would just ask in the future that if that ever comes up, Mayor, I would like to state that I think something like that needs to be discussed in some meeting first.
I have 2 things.
Commissioner Waters.
I have 2 quick things. So you had mentioned there were 40, I think, backtrack of cart exchanges. So I would assume that those would fall to the bottom of the list, not really important because they're just changing out to larger carts.
Right.
So those
Yeah.
would fall. Do you do those weekly or is there like one day a month you're like, hey, I can send out 1 truck and just do them all at the same time? Are we efficient on that where we're not taking 2 out to one neighborhood on one day and another day
Right.
we're doing that?
Yeah, our standard procedure is to switch those out on their trash day. That way they're empty
On their trash? Okay.
on trash day.
Okay.
And so they're empty and then we come back and switch them out. Cause it's a different vehicle, the trash truck versus the truck and trailer to pick them out. But yeah, they are lower priority. However, we don't wanna push them off because they have been paid for. Generally, an upgrade is paid for, so we don't wanna
And my second.
hold their money.
My second item was I agree with what Commissioner Thompson was sharing, because my concern, and I think I spoke with Commissioner Thompson on that, was that we found out that our services were being shut down on a Tuesday, which was the day after our meeting. And so that was just like a big, wow, like if it was really that serious, why didn't we know in our public meeting for the public so we could get it out there, discuss it, and allow the board to know? It really came out that Tuesday after. And I think that was a little concerning for us on how fast that came, or if maybe it didn't get to us in time. I'm not sure, but
Right.
that was a concern for us.
Commissioner May.
Posting ends Wednesday for more applicants. Is that an algorithm thing? Does it help us to pull it every now and again? Why are we ending the posting if we need it?
It could, I guess we can speak with HR. It could remain open until
she's
filled.
back here.
Open until filled.
Yeah,
That might
why
be an
end it
option.
if we need them?
Yeah, I'm going to start with some good news. We do have 3 people coming tomorrow, so we're really excited about that. But in terms of algorithm, if you just keep a posting out there indefinitely, we've learned the hard way that your posting starts to really lag, pages behind, it doesn't look fresh, so by just reposting, it kind of keeps it more toward the top.
Okay, so it'll end on Wednesday, and then when does it repost?
We can post it again immediately. Yeah.
And get the same results that you're after with this algorithm? Okay.
Yeah, we can post again immediately. There's not an issue with continuous posting. We just like to keep the dates fresh. And then that way a prospective candidate doesn't see something that was posted 6 weeks ago and might think, oh, it's probably dormant.
Got it.
It's
Okay.
been.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Unger?
I wanted to bring up, I had a citizen reach out to me about how she lost a cart. It fell into the truck, and I'm sure that's probably happened to a couple other people. So if we have cameras on the trucks, we'll see that, and that won't be an issue. Correct? I mean it sounds like she caught it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
And I don't know if that's like
it does happen quite often, honestly, especially the smaller carts.
And is that a function of the truck not working appropriately? That it would fall in?
It's the side arm. It doesn't typically happen on a rear loader, but on the side loaders, the arm just loses the grip, or it's released too soon, or the cart slips out. I'm not sure exactly.
And I know that's like technical, so that's something that could be worked on Mondays.
Yes.
On those downtimes.
Yeah, the people who do not have a cart at all are top priority, and they have been told they can set out bags, and we'll pick up their bags until they get their cart.
Great, thank you.
And one more question for me, and back to the inmates. So it sounds like that the use of the inmates and having them help us, it got us up to this point, and really it camouflaged that we did not have enough staff on our own. Is there any, in the foreseeable future, or are we going to have an opportunity to use the inmates again, or is that a permanent decision that we will not be able to?
I think it's something that we should revisit after a certain time period. I mean, they were not able to provide a guard, and they decided they were no longer able to provide their inmates without a guard. So I think that's something that we need to maybe revisit every year. I don't know what the time frame is, but yeah, that's been a big impact on our services.
Sounds like that's how we were able to do this.
Yeah.
For all these years, and now we kind of got caught flat-footed, and we have to make temporarily hire a few people, and we'll be back to normal. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. I think we did. We have, if we were fully staffed, all 18 people working, I think we'd be in good shape.
And I think, Mayor, back to what you're saying with the inmates, it really did help our area, but also the staff over at the jail is also needing people to work as well. So the goal is that they do have people there, but they have to have staff members to go on every truck to make sure they're with them, and so that really does help. That hinders us being able to use them because they don't have enough people to work at the jail. But then also, this was brought up a while back of looking at our waste management, our solid waste folks, to say that they do need to be in a different category and upgrade it, because it is a endangering job on many levels. And then with COVID and all of these things that are in trash at everyone's homes, we don't know is in it, needles and everything else, that they do need to be, increased to hazardous pay, and looking at that. And I'd mentioned that to the city manager as well as the director to start looking into that for them to get an increase to do that, because it is hazardous on so many levels. So.
Commissioner?
Last thing for me. I want to thank everybody at Waste Management. I did a ride-along on my birthday with Kenny and Jay, and they were amazing. I mean, I don't know how Kenny was doing it all by himself on the back. Every once in a while, Jay would get out. I offered to help, but I would have slowed him down. I mean, they're amazing. They put up with a lot. So hopefully we can get them staffed.
Yeah, we do appreciate them.
Is there
Thankless
any
job.
more for Ms. Beard? If not, we'll move on to discussion items.
Mayor. Don't do that. Don't do that.
That's good we stand.
No, he said you could pass it. These are
Okay,
non-
Bobby's gonna get ready. I just have a few slides to kind of introduce our first of 2 budget sessions, where all the department heads will be presenting their budget to you all. We have an opportunity for comment and changes. The ultimate goal is that after listening all these budget presentations, today, May 8th, next Monday, May 15th, that at the voting session on May 22nd on critical policy items, that yes, the BOC should decide. We will present them to you for a vote, so then we can have ready at the June 14th work session, we will have a first reading on the budget. As you all know, it must be adopted before the end of the fiscal year. So, all right. Let me just start out by saying just a few things I want to get covered, to introduce a few things, talk about our community engagement, talk about over this budget and what we've done over the last year and a half, the factors impacting the budget, our proposed budget summary, of course policy decisions, and Commissioner Thompson was mentioning that, that we would like to discuss with you, give you kind of a heads up so we can, y'all can be ready to ask lots of questions and be able to vote on it at the end of May. So factors impacting the budget. As everybody knows, oh, sorry, I'm gonna, next slide. I'm not used to doing my own clicker. Okay, BOC and community engagement. We've actually been talking about the fiscal year 24 budget since 2022. We knew then, because we received ARPA funds for fiscal year 22 and 23, $3.5 million, that we weren't going to receive them for fiscal year 24. So the staff, as along with the BOC, we started preparing for this budget. Starting off February 2022, you all adopted our strategic plan. That's been a guiding document for all of city staff and how we focus our activities and focus our work. In June 2022, mentioned in the fiscal year 23 budget, the challenges that we knew we were going to face in fiscal year 24. And in fiscal year 23, you all adopted a new investment policy as well as a rainy day fund balance policy, 2 critical foundation documents to ensure the financial sustainability of the city. In the fall, we did a new budget website. I hope people are jumping on. Citizens, anybody can jump on, look at the details, see how we have programmed the budget for the fiscal year. November 2022, the finance director and I presented to you all a state of the city finances, where actually at that time we thought we were going to be facing a $3.8 million budget deficit. So coming up to that a little bit more, we think it's 1.9, so we're in a better situation. But at that time, we spoke to you all about the challenges facing fiscal year 24, ideas for fee increases, ideas for cuts, and also introducing ways that staff were saving the city money and to cut back on expenses. We did our annual citizen survey on the fiscal year 24 budget in January. February 2023, we had the strategic plan mini retreat. We had the individual meetings with all of you all in April to start really explaining, so I'm glad to see everybody has their budget document, because what we're presenting tonight is exactly what's in your budget document. And what we have proposed to you as expenditures. And then now, of course, our public budget meetings. And throughout the year, I know that I and other city staff have talked about the budget, Kiwanis, Optimist, Rotary, different groups as well, to get people engaged, to reach as many people as possible to talk about the challenges facing this budget year. The factors. We all know that we're still feeling the impacts of inflation. I looked online, consumer price index almost 6.5%. The good news is that the state has authorized a lower pension contribution. So hazardous duty went from about a little over 49 to a little over 43% salary contribution for pension. Non-hazardous went from 26.7 to 23.3. Although we've received more state occupational tax revenue, it's still lower than pre-pandemic levels. It's still increasing, which is good, but it's still lower than before 2019. Everybody's felt the increases in prices. Gas, all of our service delivery, automotive parts. That's been huge, as well as salary increases. I've already mentioned that we did receive $3.5 million worth of ARPA funds, which we received in fiscal year 22 and 23, which really allowed us to balance the budget these last 2 years. As Katie's already talked about, we have it in other areas, recruitment challenges, staff shortages. I'm going to speak to you a little bit more about that. Kathy will also talk to you about that Commissioner Waldridge is right, not only in sanitation that we need to increase wages, but we're looking at challenges in sewer and streets and in our police department, where we see people being recruited right out from underneath us, offering so many more dollars an hour, so many more $1,000 a year, if we want to stay competitive and still offer the same level of service. And we've mentioned to you before, and we'll talk about this also in the budget meetings, that I'm really proud of the department heads. They've found many different ways to save money. We're already on track, saving about $300,000 for the upcoming budget year, and we're looking at more to ensure that we're delivering the most cost-effective city services. As you all can see, what we're facing right now is operating deficit projected at $1.9 million. Requested expenditures is $41.5 million. Projected revenue is $39.5 million approximately. For capital budget request, for those who may be listening, might not know, those are the big purchases. It's vehicles, it's replacing roofs, it's the big ticket items. Staff has requested $3.8 million in capital budgets. That would be a total budget deficit of $5.8 million. We will recommend to you some deferments of capital expenditures to you during this process, and what will be presented. We talked a little bit, and Kathy was just up here, and she'll speak a little bit more. What we're recommending is a COLA for $2,000 per employee for this year, which is about $815,000 into the budget. I'll speak to you when the city manager department budget comes up to talk about 3 proposed positions: assistant city manager, public information officer, and risk manager. I've already mentioned the additional salary increases for street sanitation and police, and also sewer, that we would like to recommend for August. We're also looking at ways that we can absorb those salary increases and find additional savings, so it won't be as big an impact to the budget. And then, of course, our capital expenditures. So policy decisions. Commissioner Thompson, right, there's many important policy decisions that should be made by the Board of Commissioners. We started talking actually about a solid waste management fee in 2022. And quite frankly, when I started in 2021, it was a discussion item because we could see, considering the ARPA funds that we need, the expenditures for the solid waste division, that this is something that we would recommend to the Board of Commissioners. What we would propose is $6 a month per household, generate about $748,000 of revenue, or $10 a month, that would be $1.2 million. The total budget for solid waste is $1.9 million. I've heard from people, and I too, Commissioner Thompson, hear from people. People contact me directly if they're upset about a solid waste management fee. And I share with them that all of our surrounding communities charge a solid waste management fee. It's only Frankfort and Franklin County that doesn't. And somebody told me one day that they're going to move to Versailles. I said, okay, we don't want to lose you. We want you to stay in Frankfort. But I have to let you know that in Versailles, you're going to pay $13.95 per month. Per month. $167 a year in solid waste management fees. In Georgetown, they charge $15.68 per month. That's $188 a year. In Lawrenceburg, they charge $140 a year, and they don't do recycling. Staff is also going to recommend an increase to the 911 fee. Right now, we charge $1 per month per landline, which many of us do not have landlines. Really, there's a few people in our community that have landlines, and businesses and state government. That generates about $116,000 a year. The 911 budget is anywhere between $1.2 and $1.4 million. What we would propose is a fee between $5 and $7 per month, that could generate $624,000 to $873,000. Again, I've spoken to people. There's many communities around us. This is allowed by state statute, and this is a critical public safety service. Versailles charges $59 a year to pay for 911 dispatch. Georgetown pays $8 per month, and Lawrenceburg charges $4.21 a year. As many of you know, this fee of $1 per landline per month was established in an agreement with the county in 1991. So you can imagine if you go back to 1991, that meant everybody in our community paid something for our public safety and for our dispatch. What we would recommend is to increase that fee and put it on households rather than landlines. Also, just a quick mention, since we've talked a lot about solid waste, the city of Frankfort used to charge for solid waste management services, and up until 2012, we charged $5 per month. That's $60 a year, which when the overall services cost about $1.8 million, I just lost it, Katie, $1.9 million for solid waste fee. It's important to be able to maintain services. The costs have gone up. We have more people. We're offering more services, recycling, leaves, all these services, and they cost money. So we will get to this. We will bring this forth to you in May 22nd for a vote. Other policy decisions that came up either in the individual discussions with you all in April or from other sources. One, KCDC, continuing to fund at $85,000. We also recommend reclassification, not in the subsidies budget, but up to you whether or not you would like to continue it at $85,000. The Simon House, it's providing a critical service, our only low barrier shelter in our community. They have requested $110,000. Staff did not make a decision on that. We felt that that should be from the Board of Commissioners, whether or not to provide Simon House $110,000 for their services. We also recommend entering into a contract because it is a critical service rather than as a subsidy and out of the subsidy budget. The Senior Center, that is a federally mandated program. That's also a recommendation that it shouldn't be considered as a subsidy. It's more like a contract for services. In previous years, we have provided them $53,000 and would offer up that should be separated, should be a contract rather than a out of the subsidy budget. The Franklin County Humane Society, we had budgeted last year at $71,500. Previously, before that, we had budgeted them at $65,000. So there was a request that we move them to $65,000. This is the tough part, and none of us revel in talking about cuts to services. We have worked very hard to cut all non-essential items, as you all know. Travel, any non-essential training, other services, other activities. That helped a little bit, but we still have a ways to go. Here are other ways that we have proposed cuts to close that operating deficit of $1.9 million, to eliminate the COLA at $815,000, no new positions at $308,000. We can also do a hiring freeze as of March 12th. If we kept the same level of staff, except for emergency management and parks, which at that time, obviously there was a lot of seasonal staff. But for everybody else, if we just kept the same level, so even if solid waste had 16 people on staff at that point, and they only have 13 now, they would be allowed to hire up to 16, but they couldn't go above 16. So whatever they had at the time, that would save about $690,000. We could also eliminate the subsidies and competitive grants. The budget for this year was about $256,000. We already lowered it to $200,000. And at this process, as we've shared with you all, staff recommended changes where we're going to have an information session in May. We'll send out applications for all the nonprofits in June, and these could be awarded in July after the beginning of fiscal year, so we can eliminate that $200,000. reduce consultant and legal fees. I'll explain a little bit some of the, a new request we have for revamping our financial ordinances that we could obviously cut because that's something new. And what we'd also highly recommend is that the Finance Committee for fiscal year 25 take up key areas for possible privatization and contracting out as a way to save money and still provide the same level of service. We would recommend that you give the Finance Committee that charge and come up with recommended ways for various services. And I'm happy to take any questions. I'll turn it over to also, I'm here, and turn it over to Alicia before we get into the department presentations.
Matt,
Commissioner Thompson?
when we talk about capital expenditures, the big babies we talked about, those big items.
Yes.
What is it that that we can pinpoint right now that we are budgeting as those capital expenditures right now?
So right now, for example, the police department have requested 10 vehicles. We've also have stormwater, much needed stormwater repair improvements. We need a new roof at Bridge Street. Finance, planning, and public works all have requests for new vehicles. Sanitation, of course, new solid waste. I know there's many more right after that. I can't think of them all, but we will go through that with you all, and that will be presented as part of that. Oh, and Alicia just presented to me pickleball courts at Dolly Graham, electric mower, Ward Oats amphitheater. We also have some grants that we've already committed to matching. So for example, the recreational trails grant for the Shinkle Lane Trail, we have a commitment of $150,000 that we have to make. The Land and Water Conservation grant that we received of $150,000, our commitment is $350,000, so we have to make that commitment. Among many others, some things for the garage, an asset management plan, some other different things. But we will also recommend items that we think could be safely deferred until the following year, until hopefully our revenue picture is looking up.
I guess my concern is that we talk about, you know, these are the drastic things that have to happen, and honestly I don't think privatization and contracting out is necessarily a drastic thing, but we talk about if no new revenue comes in, and I think that therein lies some of our major concerns from myself all the way down the days here, is that we haven't had those big numbers come in for many years, and in fact, you know, we're at a negative growth rate if you look at certain items, and so I know that we have. I'm looking at Penny in the back of the room, but I know that we have a number of projects that we hope to announce in the future, but we're years away from those, you know, seeing tax dollars from those things as well. So I guess my concern is that are we not being good stewards with regard to the either agencies or entities that should be assisting us in bringing in new tax dollars? Are there tax dollars that we're just missing out on? Are there things that we're not doing? Because it seems like for example, in December there were 3 taxes that were passed in the last board meeting of the year in 2022, and then
3 taxes? I mean, we did the insurance premiums tax, but that was one.
You had the sewer connection fee, I guess,
that we reduced.
They reduced, right? And then you had the transient room tax that you were going to apply.
There was no.
That's just state law.
That's state.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But we hadn't been enforcing that at the time with regard to.
Well, related to making sure it's enforced with Airbnbs.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And now we're talking about solid waste management, increase in 911, all valid things to be able to shrink this amount, but it seems like it's it's par for the course for Frankfort to tax and then spend, and I feel like we're back to that same old game here where we're a little behind, and of course we're a little different because we have state employees that other people didn't have, and we all understand that, but we became very dependent on state government for way too long, and that's neither here nor there. But I'm afraid that at the same time that we're raising these fees, that we are taking on large bonding projects, or at least discussing large bonding projects, where we will have to pay the bond on those, and that's a concern that, like it was said earlier, whether by Ms. Hale, whether you're gonna cut the grocery bill, or you're gonna cut the Netflix. I feel like in our household,
We've cut Netflix.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, but I think that when we know that we need to have certain projects done, we are also, it seems like we're adding taxes, but we're then adding a bunch of additional projects that don't necessarily show up in that general fund budget as it shows as expenditures, and that's the thing that I don't want the citizenry to think that every time there's a new fee or a new tax that we use that as a means to build a parking garage.
Let me provide also a little bit more background. So first of all, the good news is business tax revenue is going up. So that's trending in the right direction. And I do believe you're absolutely right. We're going to see larger revenues in the coming years, and quickly, because we do have projects that have been announced or will be announced. There's another great news. Norton Healthcare is coming. There's going to be 130 jobs starting in October, November, December. That's good. That's a game changer. They came in on their own, renovating the former Elder Behrman. I would say this. It's not that this commission or other commissions were just tax and spend. Actually, they didn't spend, and they didn't invest, and they removed fees. So then we had this buildup of maintenance where, for example, let's just say vehicles. We used to keep up with vehicles. Police used to get 8 vehicles a year, being able to maintain it. It was slashed in 2008 with the recession. We didn't do anything to adjust that, and in fact, we got rid of fees. We got rid of the 2012. In 2012, the solid waste management fee. We didn't increase anything. So instead, police were only getting 2 or 3 vehicles a year. I think last year, when you all approved 4 vehicles, that was the most that they had in quite some time. And so then you are spending all this money on cars and maintenance. This is just one example. So if you multiply that in so many other departments where there wasn't that investment, or if we think about, quite frankly, the impacts of climate change and on our stormwater. We have a stormwater design in our community that was for centuries ago, for a lot less rain. You're going to see that increase going. Katie did a great presentation last year on the impacts that's going to have. And if you compare ourselves to the communities around us, we aren't charging the same fees as everybody else. As I just pointed out, everybody around us is charging solid waste management. I mean, $14 a month for sales. We charge nothing. All of that comes out of our general fund. So if that money to pay for that service comes out of the general fund, we can't use it to pay for other services or invest or do anything else. That $1.9 million, $2 million has to come all out of the general fund. I know folks will say, I pay my taxes, which is true. We all pay our taxes here in the city. Property taxes, which most people kind of generally refer to as taxes, is about 9% of our budget, of our revenues. It's only 9%. The majority come from state occupational tax, business occupational tax, business net profit tax. So actually property taxes are if you think about it, it's about almost $4 million. That wouldn't even pay for public safety. It wouldn't pay for police, it wouldn't pay for fire. It wouldn't even pay for a public works department individually. So local governments over the years and decades have looked at different ways, fees for services, to maintain the same level of services that people expect. So I think part of it is what has happened to you all as elected officials now is that there wasn't some of that investment.
over the years. And so now you guys are presented with this. And then with the pandemic and everybody staying home and not having the same level of occupational tax revenue, now you guys are really stuck with the very difficult decisions that weren't facing previous commissions. And so that's why we've been talking about this for more than a year. It's really important and it's really hard. It's not easy.
I don't doubt that. I totally agree, and in fact, numbers make my head spin. But I will say that, for example, in Lawrenceburg, they do have a trash fee, and they have other fees that we don't have, but they don't have an occupational fee, an occupational tax. So if you make $50,000 a year, that's an extra $1,000 a year that you get to keep in your pocket. So it's a lot easier to pay a $5 fee or a $10 fee for trash pickup, knowing that that's $100 or $120 a year, knowing that you're keeping $1,000 more dollars. So I do agree with that. But the other aspect of that is that I think a lot of times when it comes to issues such as these bringing in more jobs and bringing in more tax revenue, when we don't accomplish that, we turn around and we put it back on the burden of the individuals. And you mentioned the police cars, and sorry, Chief, I'm not picking on you in particular, but you mentioned the police cars. You're absolutely right. They've asked for police cars in the past, but now we're looking at making all of those hybrid police cars, which of course is a significant increase in the price. So I understand that for years we have cut back, and now
we present that option: gas, hybrid, electric.
I agree, and I think
Excuse me, Commissioner, are we considering that? I mean, is that something we've been proposed?
Right, we can look at.
But I don't know. Has it been presented?
It's in the budget.
I think, the price it was showing that it was
Yeah.
electric, but I don't.
$70,000 more. Yeah,
it was, and I don't think that it was. I think it was in the budget to show that increase because in last year, at the end of last year, it was brought up that we wanted to switch over.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that we were going to purchase all 10 electric because also we have some issues with the electric capacity, the capacity of the what is
we
it?
can't do electric police
Yeah,
anymore.
and they don't even do it's
lights
been hybrid and all
what is
that
it
was
called?
the issue.
So the original budget that you were presented had 10, for instance, 10 police vehicles, gas at $700,000. But I did put in there hybrids could be around $800,000 for those same 10. Now, next week, I will present the capital projects and capital assets budget. And I'll present exactly what you've been shown. And then we went through and are gonna recommend things we can defer. So you'll get that next week. So, and then I also wanted to actually address something Commissioner Thompson made mention of a second ago. So aside from the Aquatic Center bond, which came on in 2014, the bonds that I'm aware of would be a bond for the fire station, which is covered with 1% insurance premiums tax, sunsetted out. Downtown and Parks Master Plan projects, which are also covered with Parks Plan, which are also covered with a 1% insurance premiums tax to be sunsetted out. And then I know we've gotten, I think, 2 TIFs. Is that correct? We have 2 TIFs. And the goal there would be that any new tax increment financing would go toward any bonds that we would have as a result of those 2 districts.
But that's a lot. Those are taxes we're not receiving though. Those are taxes just to build those items.
But we're not receiving any taxes, but we also don't have a bond issue right now either that we're having to pay for either. Those will come on simultaneously. I was just trying to add some context to what you said earlier.
But we have a parking garage bond that we're gonna have, which is at a minimum $6.5 million. We have a walking bridge that we'll have to bond, I would assume.
I would under the 1%. I'm recommending it for the downtown master plan. It'll be part of all those projects.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add context to what you said earlier.
I agree. But to say that we're not going to have any bonding projects, I mean, that's the whole reason that we raise certain things, but we also have an albatross, sitting over in B and C that that's a bond that we have to pay, and so that's just something that we have to figure out
For the garage?
For the garage, yep.
Yeah,
And all
well,
the
the goal is
infrastructure.
to use TIF money for that.
And get
So,
money
yeah.
that pays us back.
So, may I ask, so I guess the process here, we're just gonna go through each department?
Right, so Alicia's here to talk about revenue, and then we'll go.
So another was that the city manager presentation?
No,
right there?
this was just
Okay.
the overview,
Okay.
context, and then we'll have Alicia get started.
And I think Laura stole most of my thunder, so hopefully my discussion won't be too horribly long. Oh, thank you. Make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. What do you do here? Just push the, oh, okay. Okay, so, actually in your slide, I was hoping it would look more like that, but, okay, so just to give you let's talk about where we're going, let's look at where we've been. We had $35.9 million in revenue in fiscal year 20. We had 35.8 in fiscal year 21. We had 40.5 in fiscal year 22 because we got a large ARPA payment, and then we're estimating 42 million in fiscal year 23. It's obviously 6 weeks out, but we're thinking we're going to come in right around 42 million in revenue for the general fund because of that large ARPA payment Laura mentioned. Okay, so I created the pie chart so that we could look at how our revenues are broken down on our in our general fund. So we are estimating roughly $39,561,000 in general fund budgeted revenues for fiscal year 24. So as Laura mentioned earlier, occupational and business taxes, that's the employee wages as well as net profits businesses pay on, and that's a little over 14 million, 14.8 million, and that represents 38% of our revenue. If we move on down to state occupational taxes, we're estimating roughly 6.9 million, and that's around 17% of our revenues. 5.7 million will be coming from insurance premiums tax, and that's about 14% of our revenues. Then we get to property taxes, which is what most of our citizens obviously are, they know about, they come in and pay. Finance gets a lot of people coming in paying their property tax bills. That's 4.2 million. That also includes other taxes like car taxes, and I'll go over that in a second. So it's not just property taxes. It's also tangible personal property taxes, car taxes, that type of thing. We have a little over 3.8 million in intergovernmental revenue, and that's revenue we get from the federal government, the state government, and other organizations like Frankfort Plant Board, and there's a few more that I can't think of right off the top of my head. There are a lot of organizations will pay an in lieu of property taxes payment. We also have a little over 2.2 million that comes from charges for services, and that's 6% of our budget. Our recreation fees are 2% of our budget, and then our interest, rental, and other income is 2%, another 2% of our budget. So what makes all these things up? Obviously, I already said the occupational and business taxes come from employee wages and businesses' net profits. State occupational taxes, we all know what that is, and we did allow for an increase in wages for state employees. That's what we've heard, so we budgeted for that. And as Laura mentioned, the occupational and business taxes are also trending upward as well. Our insurance premiums tax includes the 1% that you voted on, and our property taxes amount includes, it's all other taxes that we collect, and it allows for the 4% property tax revenue increase we're allowed per statute without taking it to the citizens for a vote. And that's what KLC recommends every city do every year. Take that option, build that 4% in. So we did that again.
Our intergovernmental revenue is payments from the federal government, state government, other local governments, forgot about those folks over across the river, organizations, and other departments. Charges for services, a big one is our ambulance service. We've also got recycle and garbage upgrades, inspections, permits, right-of-way. Our recreational fees include our golf course, our aquatic center, shelter rentals, league fees, and concessions for both the swimming pool and the ballparks, the leagues. And then everything else would just be interest we earn on our accounts, rental fees, and all other revenue that didn't fit into those categories that I just provided you. So, I feel like we'll get definitely a little over 39.5 million. Let's hope for more. I always say when I present to you guys, these are numbers I hope I'm wrong on. I hope it's a little bit better than that. But that's our estimate right now, and I'll take any questions on any of those if you have any. And these numbers were what you were presented back in April during your individual budget meetings. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I had one question. You mentioned the insurance premium tax.
Yes, ma'am.
And how we have that the 1% going to the parks and the master's plan, and city manager has the bridge in there because it was mentioned in the master plan, and that 1% is going to that. So how much of that is going toward that bridge, and how much of it's actually going to go toward parks?
That 5.7 million is only the general fund. That does not include the other two 1% amounts that will be part of capital projects accounts at that time to fund those projects. That does not include the other two 1% amounts. That's all general fund.
We will bring those projects towards, once we'll gather internally and make recommendations to the BOC.
Okay, I just want to know what that breakdown would be, because doing the insurance premium tax was really a focus more on parks than anything, and I just don't want that bridge to take away from all the residents' parks for a bridge, and what that percentage is, and where we plan on getting the rest of that money if it doesn't come out of premium tax.
So my early estimate for the fire station and also for downtown and parks plans, it's around $850,000 a year for each of those, which would bond somewhere around $10 to $12 million in projects each. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And of course, obviously, that's subject to interest rate changes and things of that nature, which we all know are changing rapidly. But that's my best estimate right now.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any others for Ms. Boyce? Oh.
Yeah, I've got to get it. Sorry, I got to keep these organized, or I won't be able to.
It's like you can't leave.
I know. What is
just keep.
Oh, is it just clicking through? Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I already went over those. Okay. Your all's budget. So I just did a really quick slide for you for your convenience to show you what has been spent in fiscal years 21 and 22, what was budgeted in fiscal year 23, and what is proposed for fiscal year 24. And as you can see, your proposed budget for fiscal year 24 has actually dropped substantially, and I'll explain that a little as to what's happened from those years. Okay, so since we're doing this for everybody else, I thought it'd be good for the citizens to see your payroll, your commissioner payrolls. When you compare to other departments, you guys actually have a lower percentage of payroll than other departments do typically. And currently, your current costs are a little over $114,000. That includes fringes. And your COLA, because 2,000 would actually be too much, it would be above the percentage that would be allowable. I did build in a 4% COLA for each of your salaries, and that would be roughly $4,500. Total. Yes, sir. Total. And that includes fringes as well. Okay, so, all your other expenses for fiscal year '24 budgeted are a little over $736,000. So if you're looking at a breakdown, your payroll's about 14% of your budget in total, whereas all your other expenses are roughly 86% of your total. We've got auditing fees built in for your budget. That would be our financial statement audit, and then the DEI audit. That half of that would be budgeted in there. You got legal fees budgeted in there. You've got the cultural tourism consultant budgeted in there. Remote worker initiatives budgeted. NREL's budgeted. Association dues are budgeted. So quite a few, what I would consider bigger ticket items are budgeted as part of your operating expenditures. Now the section that we get a lot of discussion about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's Penny. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cultural tourism, is that what Penny's title
Yes,
is?
that's
Okay.
Miss Peebler. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, Miss People.
Sorry, we just changed the title. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. That's just what we refer to it in the budget.
Okay.
Okay. So did anybody have any? I'm sorry. Did anybody have any questions on those other fees? No. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the subsidies, and Laura talked quite a bit about that earlier. City Manager Haig. Sorry. Throw those individual names around. So currently, as listed in your budget, KCDC's budgeted at $85,000, and that's previous amount. We got new events budgeted a little over $12,500 for anything new that might come along that you guys would want to do a one-time subsidy funding for. We've also got the Simon House, and they asked for $110,000. We got this task force, new invasive species. They asked for $15,000, and then everybody else that didn't fall into any of those categories, we did competitive grants of $200,000. Now, obviously, you can change this. You can keep the same, do whatever you need to, and that's what you will be. That's what will be brought to you on May 22nd. So. As I said there, on May 22nd, you can vote to change, you can vote to, leave it the same, you can instruct me to leave it the way it is. However you instruct me, it'll be how it'll be presented for the first and second readings in June. So, and just so you know, the subsidies part of your budget is roughly 50% of your total budget. So it's even a higher percentage, I guess, of just your operating expenditures, but it's at least 50% of your total budget. So there's, the city does quite a bit to help local organizations too. And I'm actually finished with that part. So if you had any questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
As part of that 4% COLA for the city commission,
Yeah.
what part of that is salary versus benefits? I know
Probably not off the. I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. I can.
Pension is 23%.
Well, they don't all pay pension.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd have to. I can get that for you. I'm happy to send that. I just don't know it off the top of my head right now. So.
it's okay. My only reason I bring that up is we're asking everybody else to tighten this up. None of us are getting rich for what we're doing here. I would ask that we all consider, we don't have to make a decision right now, but I would ask that we consider foregoing any cost of living adjustment for the board. I know that's minimal, but at least it's showing that we're not.
Yeah. And if that's something you want to do, I will make that change after that May 22nd meeting, and then it would be part of the readings in June.
I've also, I'm sorry.
I also wrote that down.
I was thinking about that, and also travel for us.
Well, so you actually don't have any travel and training in your current commission
making sure
budget.
there's none. Okay.
Yeah, no, there's. I'll double check, but no, we're paying the dues to be in the various organizations, but there is no. Is that right, Laura? There's no travel and training for no one. And but now what we can do on the 22nd, because it was mentioned in the individual meetings, we will have that as one of the things you can vote on to restore or
Mhm.
keep out of there. So, because that was brought up.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
No
My pleasure.
reimbursement for gas or anything. I'm serious.
Well, you
Oh,
have
yeah,
an
right.
electric vehicle, Mayor.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, I just,
Right. I was thinking about everyone.
He's speaking about everybody else, making sure
Gotcha.
that. I can say that every time I've traveled this year to Lexington and Louisville, I have not charged
Right.
any food or gas back, have I, Mr. May?
nope. He made me
That-
a,
My
but that's zero. That's.
yes, correct. So
No.
right now,
That's
that
right.
is zero in the budget. You should be able to see it in your budget workbooks. It's zero currently for budget for that particular line item. Did you have any other questions for me? Okay. Your guys' budget was easy, and I'm really glad I don't have to be the one standing up here
You know,
the
I do have
entire
one
time.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, subsidies, because they are so huge.
Yep.
And we have been talking about them for quite some time and over the years that we're really trying to push subsidies out, you know, and into, you know, the homeless shelter and everything underneath of like the CARES and, you know, when are we gonna push the CARES forward? Because I thought when we were talking about this over a year ago that when we were going into 2024, we were hoping that we were not gonna be having those subsidies, that we were only gonna be putting what we wanted to put into CARES, and then CARES was gonna help that. When does CARES kick in so we don't have to worry about those subsidies except for the ones that fall in, like the senior citizen that we're trying to do a contract with and things like that? When does that kick in?
So, as of this, what I know latest, but this was probably last month, they still haven't received their 501c3.
Okay.
But I can ask Charlie Kendall, who's the chair of the Carroll's Coalition, and that is
Okay.
independent from the city,
Yes.
to see to get an update from him. But as of right now, I'm not aware that they actually have received their 501c3 to be able to start receiving grants.
Okay, thanks.
Do you guys have any other questions for me? I'll be back up here in a hot minute, so. All right, thank you.
Okay, couple slides, you can see, overall, we've kept a budget similar to last year, but cutting back on some professional fees, mainly legal fees, and other services, special events, cutting back on some other events. We did have money in there for economic development. That was for the one-time expenditures that y'all had approved last year. Of course, the big new request from our department is new staff. And I think there's a number of reasons why that I'd like to share with you all, and happy to answer any questions. You know, I consider these positions to fill some critical staffing gaps and allow us to implement key activities of the strategic plan, especially economic development and the story of Frankfort. Also, for example, the risk management officer, reduce insurance claims, and also communicate even better with our community, but being proactive in strategic communications with media beyond Frankfort throughout our state and regionally. With the public information officer, the story of Frankfort priority and the strategic plan, activities that we have on hold because we cannot do them with our current staffing. Things such as a coordinated, updated website content, proactive development of media relationships, pitching stories, enhanced external communications, and also to be able to explore emerging social media patterns, to name a few. There's a lot of these activities in your strategic plan that we are not doing, we can't do because we don't have the current staffing. And I think the public information has been identified for several years now as a key staff role. The risk management officer, this was something we've discussed with KLC. They identify it as a priority. They recommend that any community over 10,000 people have some sort of risk and safety management officer. This would be critical in reducing insurance claims. We were just talking about all the injuries and focus on safety. Risk management officer would identify where are we seeing higher risk claims. Maybe it's in our workers' comp. Maybe it's in other areas, and be able to do training directly related to that. KLC is also willing to support us in this effort for the first 3 years and support us with $15,000 a year to help pay for it, as well as recruitment, getting organized. And often they find this position pays for themselves. Assistant city manager. previous city managers have identified a need for an assistant city manager and work closely with the city manager, ensure continuity of operations. Commissioner Thompson was talking about the bonds. Well, we're really excited because we are going to have, and Commissioner Waldridge, a lot of exciting bonds coming up, particularly in the Parks Master Plan and the Downtown Master Plan. That's $10 to $12 million worth of projects that our current staff cannot manage effectively. We don't have the time. For example, parks, Sean Pickens does a great job with some of our smaller efforts. As you know, we have new tennis courts going in. We're going to have a big redevelopment at East Frankfort. We're going to have Schenkel Lane. There's a lot of things going on that we need to make sure are managed and done well and implemented well. With all those projects, we need an extra pair of hands. In addition, there are several activities in the strategic plan, that, particularly related to economic development, that we can't implement because we don't have the executive administrative staffing to be able to do it. Finally, I'd like to mention in the 2022 compensation study that you all received last year, they identified that an effective span of control for management is managing 6 to 7 people. And currently, this city manager has 13 direct reports. It's not an effective span of control. They looked at all of our departments. The rest of the directors and deputy directors have an effective span of control, whether it's mentoring staff or ensuring, adhering to the work plan, all the different type of activities. We do not have that in the city manager department. Emphasizing a little bit more with continuity of operations, as you all have witnessed and experienced over the last several years with changes in the city manager, it's a little bit jarring when that person has left. I know Rebecca Hall told me that I was the 11th city manager in 15 years. Having an assistant city manager is someone who you can rely on, who can continue the projects and continue the work, even if there is disruption with the city manager position. So I would urge, I know we're spending funds in a year where we have a $1.9 million budget deficit. And I know that would be one way you can quickly reduce that. But I would urge you that the number of projects that we have going on, implementing the vision that you all have set forth in the strategic plan, we need to have staff to be able to do it. We can't continue to do all the activities unless we have other staff. And particularly I think with the needed growth, we're talking about the need to increase revenues here in our community. This person could help with the enabling environment in order to improve that. It's easier to do business here and to help us to grow our economy. You can see our staffing as of now, 10 full-time, 1 part-time, $1.1 million. Proposed fiscal year 24 would be $1.4 million. The 3 new positions, our COLA would be about $34,000. Other details, professional fees, you see a larger amount. These are legal fees that we need to pay for. Sustainable Strategies, that's our grants consultant in DC who helps us with Tiger and RAISE and all the other grants that we receive. We do have a new request for additional legal fees, and that's to overhaul our city finance ordinances. They are antiquated and old and cumbersome. We have met internally to try to make some changes, but they really need an overhaul. We would like to hire outside legal support to kind of get it started, do something initial that then our city attorney can review and make sure that it would work for the city of Frankfort. That is one area that I also recommend that we could cut, considering that we have a budget deficit, but that this is something new and supportive of our economic development priority. And of course, other consulting support. Under other services and special events, we have our grant matches. Some of you may or may not know, but we did receive a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to do concerts outside of downtown. I'll be working with Rebecca and Blair. They'll be announcing here in the next coming months that we can have a concert in Capitol View Park, a concert at Fort Hill. We're going to have other locations. Really excited to bring music to other parts of the community. And of course, a new mural at the VFW. Our special events, Women's Equality Day, Here is something new. We did put in $5,000 for the 60th anniversary of the March on Frankfort, which will be March 4th, 2024. We think that's a really special occasion. We will work with others to organize activities and events, money for town gown activities, as well as money for support for the Story of Frankfort strategic plan priority. So make it quick, but happy to answer any questions.
Anything?
Come
Any
on.
questions?
Well, I guess, shall I start?
Commissioner
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the budget. I'm not okay with this budget, being the situation that we're in right now in regards to this, wanting to raise fees on, across the board. I understand we have to raise fees, but at the same time, I feel we continue to raise fees, we continue to try to save money, but we also bring a huge expense with us, and we just continue to dig ourselves back in a hole. I don't foresee a way out in this, so we continue to bring forward. I know you have 13 direct reports. You have 13 strong direct reports that are very knowledgeable in their field, and I think hold this city really together, regardless of how many city managers we've been in. But I think, as far as the direct reports, I think they do a great job. But in reporting to you, that was part of the job when you got hired, that you had that many direct reports. So to see someone come in like a year or so in, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's too many direct reports, that's a concern. That is a hiring concern. So, for me, when you look at assistant city manager, right now, this says 144,000 and what, 780, is that what it was?
With fringe,
yeah.
yes.
So that's with fringe and things. And so when I look at that, like your salary right now is 140. I didn't see anywhere where you're saying that you would like a city manager and you're going to give them some of your duties, and you're slashing your...
Oh, of course I'd give them some of my duties.
Yourself. So, of course, right. And so you're not slashing any of your salary to help succumb to be profitable for someone else to come in. You're actually bringing someone in as assistant city manager for almost the same pay that you're creating, which is a huge deficit to me for our city. I understand, like right now it says city manager, and you continue to put economic development underneath of it because that's some that this commission has asked for, maybe economic development, and the mayor's push on economic development. I just think right now at this time, we have voted already to bring in a risk management officer, which is already a hefty salary there with fringe, that will hopefully save us money in the long run, and maybe look over some things where we can save. And I think that's something that we voted for in our strategic plan. But
There was no official vote, though, but we had a good discussion about it at the strategic plan retreat.
Well, neither here nor there. You said that basically we had a vote, and we've discussed that's the one position that we knew we wanted to hire for, and these other positions keep getting in. I don't think, for me, that it supports that we're in a hole that we're in, and we do not have a projection of the next 5 years of where we're going financially to say that we need these positions when we're trying to increase the budget for salaries of other positions that are needed for services in our community. So I can't say that I agree to that. Again, I think that's mayor and commission. I think that's on our type of government that we have, that is a city manager ran government. That's why a strong city manager is needed in that particular position, to be able to uphold these things and to be able to lean on our staff who are intelligent enough in their positions to see how those roles in their departments can maybe train other positions and maybe merge some areas to make their areas stronger versus, feeling overwhelmed with 13 directs. Maybe that's micromanaging. I'm not sure exactly what we would say that would be, but I just don't feel, when you sign up for a position and you're having 13 directs, I just feel overall that
One
this is
thing
not
with,
okay.
just to respond, if you go into any business, private sector business, nonprofit, an effective span of control, 6 to 7 people with extremely competent people, we have great department heads. And the amount of activity, though, to be effective for the amount of activities that this BOC would like to see and the transformational change we would like to see requires additional executive power. Cindy Steinhauser, previous city manager, had requested and was promised an assistant city manager.
The reason why our city attorney was made assistant city manager is because a previous city manager needed some help. It is a lot. Yes, I knew it coming into it, but that doesn't mean it makes it the most effective way to run a city is to keep it the same. You look at Paducah, a town of our size, assistant city manager. Paris, an even smaller community, assistant city manager, because they recognize in implementing the vision of the BOC and doing the transformational change that you would like to see, we need more executive administrative authority to be able to make it happen.
Commissioner May?
Oh, Lisa had her hand up, sorry. I think I was blocking. Oh, okay.
Did you have
Was you
something to
first?
say?
Oh,
When it comes to the position, just to follow up, I never, thought that you were asking for this position because you feel like you, as Laura Haig, needed this position. It's an identification of what this position needs moving forward to be effective. And I think when you look at numbers of 11 and 15 years, it's hard to say that's a person. I think that's a pattern. That's an operational flaw, perhaps, in a pattern. If you have 11 and 15 years, that starts to tell us there's something going on that needs to be addressed. So out of these, the proposed ones, I would think it would be important to start at the top because perhaps that new individual could take on some of those roles of the public information officer because there's more time for that individual to do that. And then as we work towards hiring all three, we can stair step those responsibilities, pull them away, start having those actual full-time positions, take them on. And I agree with you, to ask to decide where we spend the money right now is very difficult. But if you want to fix it in the long run and not continue to just try to plug the holes, I think you have to make the commitment to have people there to watch it, like you were talking about, in continuity. So, just letting everybody know kind of where I see the point of it. I understand the point of it, and I do think it could be of value, in the long run to actually hopefully help us with the 11 out of 15 years problem.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that a little bit. And Commissioner May. Anyway, moving on. I personally, I want it all, and I would love to have all three positions. We'll see how that works out, but I feel like some of the changes that City Manager Haig has brought to us, and even these positions that she's bringing to us, we might see that cycle break of a city manager leaving every 2 to 3 years. Every year, whatever that is. So, just a quick comment on that.
Anyone else? And I'll say, I think it's a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. I think I don't think it's if we add a position, it takes away from another position. But if we add a position, potentially we do grow into more revenue, especially if this person is handling some of the economic development functions that right now, because we don't have somebody that is overseeing that inside the city, we are basically it's going to other places, and sometimes things fall through the cracks. Sometimes we're not following up like we would want to if we were taking accountability here in the city. So I think I understand why you're asking for it. I do think that it is a potential. Well, I could, and I see Commissioner May's point too. If you put that position in there, perhaps that unlocks everything else. I think it's interesting if we were to do all three of these. It would enable us to do many of the things we've talked about in the past. Commissioner Thompson?
I am. I'm not always averse to spending. I know that's what everyone thinks. In fact, in my own business, I live by the mantra. If you ask my wife, I will always say you got to spend money to make money. So I firmly believe that. My concern, Madam City Manager, is that that you mentioned other cities, Paris and Paducah. I think you mentioned, and those are growing communities, and I can see the argument on each side there. That are they growing communities because they have more staff, or do they have more staff because they're growing communities? You know, when I drive to a town like Winchester and I see every single restaurant, you know, filled, and you know, there's traffic in Winchester, you know, to get through, just to get to GRC, it makes you wonder what's going on in Winchester, and I think the issue has been a cycle, and it's not you, City Manager Haig. It's the fact that we have had we've had an aura or an issue with the environment, from the city manager's office down to even the commission, and then to the actual employees, that over the last 20 years that gives concern about adding more top-heavy executive positions, and that's one of the things that I have a concern with. Every organization that we've talked to, whether it's fire, whether it's police, whether it's whatever the public service, we have talked about, you know, flattening out executive staffs, and I fully agree. You know, one of the things I was going to talk about tonight was the fact that, you know, all of our, except for the mayor, who has a beautiful coif on the front page of the webpage, all of our information, our bios, are from 2 years ago. I mean, there's been no update of the commission page, and I get that. I mean, nobody has who's going to do it. You know, who has time to do it?
Mine was updated. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But there are a number of things I know that need to be done, and I know that everybody's working late hours and everybody's you know doing everything they can, and we have amazing staff that does that. But just as Commissioner Waldridge said, I would love to see how other communities don't have the size of employee numbers, but are able to have balanced budgets and also have significantly higher revenues. And I've studied that for a year now, and I don't know what the magic sauce is. I really don't. But I do think it starts with, you know, getting some of these services contracted out, and whether that means that we contract out just like we're going to do with the legal services on the financial ordinances, whether we contract that out our social media and our publications, if you will, to someone else. That I think is something that I'd love to look at. And just looking at the average salaries online for city managers in the state of Kentucky on average, where we're kind of in the middle of all those populations. You know, we're a little bit higher on that end, but then your average assistant city manager and assistant city solicitor comes in, well below that $65,000-$70,000. So, if we are going to add somebody, I would love to have something that is more palatable when it comes to a salary position, and perhaps go that route. I fully understand it's going to assist you and assist your office to have more people to work. I don't know where you put them all, to be honest with you, but I think we'd find room. But I honestly think that right now it would be hard to justify all three of those positions. I do think we probably need to reassess everyone's roles, perhaps, and what everybody's doing, because it shouldn't all fall on you at times, and it shouldn't fall on the mayor or other people. But be that as it may, that's just my only comment about it. I'm going to continue to work to see how this works across the state and see if it's justifiable. So thank you for presenting it, and we'll see what we can do.
Commissioner Waldridge?
And I just want to clarify, because it's been said multiple times that, over the past 15 years, we've had 11 city managers or what have you. And I want to be very clear that these city managers that have left in the past recent isn't because they couldn't uphold their duties or because they were struggling in their duties. These people left because of issues in politics and personal issues. So I just want to be very clear of that we did not have weak city managers here. We had maybe a weak city commission at that time who could not stand up and support good city managers. So I definitely want to make sure that we understand that they weren't running from the work or like they were overwhelmed. It was a lot to do with politics. And then my follow-up is that, I understand we have a lot of projects coming on. We're asking a whole lot. We have been a very active commission in trying to move forward and get a lot of things done. I understand that. But for me, when we're in the negative and we're asking for these salaries, and these are not low-grade salaries. No. These are salaries everyone wished they would have, and probably some of our staff are not getting paid some of this. So it's like, it's like a huge and here we are trying to keep morale and keep them at their status and raising, certain things. I just want to make sure that, I put this on our city commission. I put where we are in our city commission. And I understand these positions are needed and certain people are for them, and maybe I'm not in the 3 vote right now, and I understand that. But I still think the city and our residents that I'm representing needed to hear my opinion on this and where I'm coming for this, that we do have a lot of work going on. But when we voted in a very strong project manager, and it wasn't a city manager-based hire. And I think that if we were stronger in that area, that maybe we would be able to go in a different direction. And so for me, I just can't say that we're coming in and because we voted for a project manager, that now all of a sudden we want all these other things done and be able to put out the same salary. Because if that was the case, the city manager, the number one choice that we had, that we reached out for city manager, if we take your salary and the salary you're requesting, we could have had someone that really turned Cleveland around and really got going. But the problem was we didn't want to spend that money because it wasn't feasible in our city. And now all of a sudden you're asking for that salary that we didn't want to pipe out for one city manager that was a city manager. That's all I'm saying.
I think you hired a city manager and not a project director or project manager. And I have been running the city, and I've been running it very well with all the department heads who do an excellent job. I think in presenting this, when I think about the big picture and what you guys have set out as your vision, Commissioner Waldridge, everyone, Thompson, Unger, May, and the mayor, you want this city to grow. You want to see new activities. You want to see transformational change. Mm-hmm. We have kept about the same level of staff for mm-hmm. years. Mm-hmm. In order to be able to do transformational change, you need a little bit more executive firepower. There's a lot of activities going on. And when we're trying to do something different, it's not only implementing these new initiatives that you guys have set forth in the strategic plan, but it's also change. You are working and changing, the staff is changing. We're doing things differently. We're leading new initiatives. That takes a lot. Mm-hmm. So, there's no question that we have a great team here. Mm-hmm. I think for what we are being asked to do, and we are implementing that strategic plan that y'all adopted, this is what is needed. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll see that change and continue to see that change with a bit more executive firepower to help us guide and lead and do these projects and programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, insurance.
So before Kathy and I present, we did something similar. Just wanted to give you a snapshot of actual expenditures and budgeted expenditures and what our proposed budget for 2024 is, and that's a little over 3.9 million. And we have an insurance department. There's no personnel or anything in it. It's truly just all of our different various types of insurances that the city has. So I'll let Kathy speak to medical and workers' comp, but I just wanted to let you guys know unemployment insurance was actually, technically I could say workers' comp. We don't really have a lot of changes in workers' comp or unemployment insurance. In your meeting that you had back in April, we were not aware of this until a couple of days ago. KLC went through and they revalued all of or not revalued, they looked at all the values we have, replacement costs for all of our various properties, capital assets and things. They determined we were $22 million undervalued, so they've come back with that policy change, and it'll be about $14,000 added expense in the general fund and another $5,600 added expense in the sewer fund. But they went through that exercise and added some replacement costs to what we own. I just want to let you know that part of it, and then I think Kathy will speak to medical.
Actually, I'm going to touch first on that workers' compensation budget where it says no. Was there a question?
We like you, Kathy. It's like stop us.
I wanted to touch on workers' compensation, and we presented no change, and we've enjoyed a lot of really terrific years where we've been quite stable with our workers' compensation program. So I still think it's okay to say no change, but I do feel like I should share that in looking at our data in 2023, we are off to a poor start in 2023 with our expenses and our number of claims. So it looks like we could be hitting a high number of workers' comp claims this year if we continue on the trend that we're on. I don't think that's going to really blow it out of the budget, but I just thought I should at least mention that is looking like it could be a potential concern this year as I compare it to prior years.
Is that a particular department that is coming from, or is that or a particular issue that has popped up?
I would say that in Public Works, we have seen a bit of an uptick in a couple of divisions.
Okay.
So in both transit and in solid waste, we've seen somewhat of an uptick. They're relatively small departments, so just in looking at those numbers, you wouldn't necessarily say 4 is a lot. But when you're talking about 18 people, 4 is a lot.
I was worried that perhaps mental health counseling and things of that nature may have been an issue with regard to employees because of pandemic issues and things. And I wanted to make sure that we had the resources available with our new provider, because I understand we'll have a new provider, so that we'll be able to have those options.
Yeah, I with the workers' comp, I'm not aware of any being, and actually mental health typically wouldn't fall under that umbrella of coverage. But thank you for pointing out the availability of an enhanced EAP service, which we're trying to promote and seeing a little bit of utilization with that.
Yes, ma'am.
So then to talk about medical, there's a pretty large increase in the budget of $400,000. So to speak about that, I want to go back to fiscal year 2022. We were over budget by nearly $400,000 in 2022. And that year we experienced a really large number of high claimants. So we have what's called stop loss coverage, which will buffer the city from excessive claim costs. And we avoided around $950,000 of excess coverage claims in 2022. So you don't typically see that many high claims. And I thought, could be a little bit of a fluke. Let's hope for a return to kind of prior costs that we would see in 2023. But as we look at our cost in 2023 with just a few months left, we're at $2.7 million, and we're very likely, again, to be like $400,000 over budget. So it is unreasonable, I think, to say we'll go into a third year and suddenly that $400,000 will be just recovered or go away when we're 2 years deeper into medical inflation. We have a slight increase with the number of covered lives, but I don't think that's the primary driver. We continue to have high claimants, and then a big driver is our RX cost. We've introduced a potential cost-saving measure, which we do see employees participating in, but it has just started, and it's, again, it's just starting, and that in and of itself won't be enough to cover $400,000. So those are kind of the drivers for that, the reason that cost increase is in the budget. Are there any questions about that?
I guess with that increase, is that us maybe changing insurance again? Is that all factored in? If we have to change insurance,
we will be changing our third-party administrator again for 2024 because Humana is moving out of the large employer market. They're moving in a different direction. So it's not a thing with the city of Frankfort that they are ditching us. They're just not going to continue to be players in that.
Will that affect that $400,000?
So we will be making a change again, but I would say no, that is not the big driver. The big driver is that we've had 2 years of considerable high claims, and then when the stop loss carriers are having to pay for that, and we have to provide our claims data to the potential carriers, Sure, it's just like a car accident.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of car accidents and
It goes up.
goes out, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You've had a request for a 5-minute break. Would that be okay
Yes.
with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. A break for 5.
Hey, can I get you
Okay.
anything? Can I get you anything?
It's been covered actually already through our city manager and finance director, so I'll try to be quick going through it. As we've discussed, the first phase of cost of living adjustment or pay increases, we're proposing $2,000 flat increase for all full-time employees. That would equal about $925,000 with general fund and sewer fund. It's a flat dollar increase, so that would distribute funds equally among all the eligible employees. And one of the strategies that is being implemented through this is to prevent widening of disparity between your earners, because when you're giving a flat dollar increase, it continues to keep the difference between salary equal. So as you can see, nearly 2/3 of our full-time employees have base compensation under $55,000. So this $2,000 will help to boost the pay on the lower earner side.
May I ask a question here?
Absolutely.
Is this based on, is this done traditionally in local governments or anything of that nature? I'm just trying to figure out where the idea came from, and I'm not knocking it, I'm just trying to figure out the logic behind it.
I would answer no, at least for the city of Frankfort, it hasn't been a traditional approach to give a flat dollar increase. Percentage increases have been more common. The start of this occurred with just looking at nationwide, what are businesses, what are industries targeting for increases, or budgeting for increases in 2023. It wasn't, no focus was particularly given on municipalities. Municipalities, especially smaller ones, often are lower paying compared to the private sector. So we were just looking in general, what in the country are businesses targeting? And depending on the site you use, you can look at World of Work, you can look at Society for Human Resources Management, you can look at Forbes. It tended to range between 4 on the low side to 5 on the high side, but very few were actually, again, for big surveys, going over 5. Now, we're aware of some local competitors in our area that are going over 5. Percent, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we looked at around 4% and took that dollar value and then just divided it equally among our full-time employees, that's kind of where the basis for this comes from. Does that answer your question?
It does. I wondered, I understand I think I understand the logic so that there's not a greater disparity between those that make less than 50 and those that make greater. But I wonder if there is, one of the issues that we have right now is competitiveness with our folks who have been in our fire and EMS, police for long periods of time. And even those who are not been here long periods of time, they hear $2 more at another location and they jump.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if there was any discussion with any of those specialized services, and whether there would be a morale issue with someone who may make $50,000 a year, but has a hazardous duty type job versus a clerical job. Both very important. Please don't hear me say it's different importance. But was there ever discussion about any morale issues that may come from such a decision?
I think whatever way you go with this, it's a delicate balance, because what I would provide, and I'll answer your question, if we do 4% for our people that make $35,000 a year, then they're going to get $1,400. Our folks that make $100,000 are going to get $4,000. That's a big disparity. So are there morale issues, or would some people prefer to do a percentage increase? I would have to say yes. Would some people prefer a flat dollar increase? I would have to say yes. So it kind of depends on the individuals you ask in terms of what they would prefer for how that's allocated. But I'm trying to explain the rationale or the logic that it went into this proposal, and then ultimately you all can vote on what makes the most sense to you.
Sure. And I appreciate that honest answer. I would just throw out there, and I guess my point is that, you know, somebody who's making $100,000 may have a doctorate for all I know, or be an engineer or a rocket scientist, or have 25 years of experience, whereas somebody that may be making less may not have the same education, may not have the same experience. And so, you know, have they earned a higher rate that they should earn? I don't know, but that's I've seen that way more common as a percentage as opposed to across the board. And I wondered if there had been any discussions about any morale issues in the specialized, more hazardous duty areas.
Yeah, I think
Or
that
Kathy, maybe you can go to the slide where we're talking about some of the differentiations in pay, which might address a little bit of what Commissioner Thompson was asking
okay,
about.
certainly, I'll jump forward. I do want to, though, just to kind of come back to this question, that when we completed our wage study a year ago, it was one of the ideas that the consultant presented at that time. So really, this is kind of revisiting that, because as was mentioned, if we look at where we're really losing employees, where we're struggling, and we talk about staffing with solid waste and how that's impacting us. We did this a year ago with our wage survey, and 1 year later, we're still in the same spot. I just ran this data last week. So in the last 12 months, we've lost 49 full-time employees. 11 of those were retirees, which you would expect. They've reached the end of their career. But that leaves us with another 38 who are non-retirees. Of those 38, 95% of them left within the first 6 years of their employment. This is really telling about where the wages are broken, where the pay needs to improve, because people are leaving in at a rate in the last few years that the city hasn't seen in the past. And they can go pretty easily to neighboring areas and receive higher wages. So,
But is it always about pay?
from what I'm being told by department heads, primarily it's about pay. They're telling me that people will leave and go to another job for a couple $1,000s more a year.
Commissioner Thompson, if I may add with Kathy, the challenge is the city responding to the changes in the pension. As you know, Tier 3, it's portable, and it's not what it was before. So we're obviously not losing Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees. They're happy. We find that once people stay here after 10 years and there's a good pension. The city, and I think what Kathy is going to propose, is how we adjust in these certain divisions and a department where our people start to get rewarded at year 6 or year 3. But afterwards, people don't want to wait that long because they can make $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 more someplace else because the pension's the same. You know, they're not getting anything extra. It doesn't mean anything to stay. So when we're looking at police and sanitation, solid waste and streets and sewer, it is to reward people, just raise everybody's pay. Because if they start at a higher rate, we offer longevity, we offer better health benefits, we offer some other differentials that others don't. People stay.
I would agree with that. I think because we're talking in generalities, talking to department heads, they say, yeah, if we could pay more, we'd be able to keep people. But when I talk to folks who are leaving, when I talk to people in fire, EMS, police, sanitation, they say to me, I'd work for less if there was a culture and environment that was more palatable. And I think, just to be perfectly blunt and honest, that I think that it's not always about pay. And I think that we kid ourselves if we think we can pay our way into having a happier and more content workforce here. And I think that's an issue that has come up multiple times in discussions that I've had with individuals. So I would just throw that out there too. So
I would agree that we would kid ourselves if pay were the only factor, but I would also say that we kid ourselves if we don't recognize real competition that we're facing. So we've got actual data from neighboring communities on what they're paying, what they're proposing to do. Walmart will pay $19 an hour for indoor work. We're paying $17.03 to ride in all kinds of weather on the back of a garbage truck lifting cans. So what would a lot of people choose? I think that we need to make our wages attractive enough for the work that we want to have done.
Totally agree. I think if you did a comparison though of the individuals who say work at a neighboring police force that I can think of, and you ask them about their happiness and attitude of their work environment, it would be significantly different than say Frankfort. And I think they're not making any more money, but making $2 more an hour by going there, because you're spending gas just to go up there. But they're going because there's an environment there that they like to work in, and that's not just not police. I think that's citywide, and I think that's why we're seeing it, year in, year out. So
I don't know if there's 100% evidence for that. I think some people might leave. Maybe it's different. Some people want to be SROs. Maybe some people leave. But I don't think this is a widespread issue that the majority of people are leaving because of our culture. And in fact, you were talking about the person we hired in sewer who's making less money and is happier here than I think when he was in Lexington and sewer or other places. So I think it's extremely difficult to generalize. And we do address these issues. So I just think that's impossible to do out of all the people who have left when we've heard other.
Have we done exit interviews of all the police
Definitely,
and fire?
definitely not all. We have done them sometimes. And I agree with both of you. There can be people that leave to see another or to find another culture, but there are also people, as Laura's pointing out, or city manager is pointing out, that are here and are praising the culture. We've got a public safety member starting this week, returning, because it was the culture that individual wanted to be in. And so I think that it really varies, but we are doing our diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment, which really touches on culture and gives employees an opportunity to speak to how they feel about the culture, will possibly provide us with more insight into that. Identifying your department will be optional, but I hope that employees will, because it'll be really hard to get meaningful information from it if employees don't identify their department, because it does seem that how people speak about the culture depends on the department they work in. That's my own opinion.
I agree. I do not think they will give their department though. I just don't. But that's just me. Sorry, Mayor. I know I've gone too long. I will stop.
Let's keep it moving.
Okay, so this just identifies that we're seeing a lot of turnover happening in the early years of employment. And then in addition with the turnover that we're seeing in the early years of employment, we're seeing those in specific departments. And so the departments that we're seeing the highest turnover, solid waste, which should come as no surprise based on what you've heard this evening. Streets at 26%, police at 14.7%, and then sewer at 13.1%. These are divisions or departments that we've identified that need some extra help with stability, and that we would look to come back in August with some means for increasing wages beyond the $2,000 per employee. We don't yet have enough specifics around exactly what that will look like, but we've already got some really strong ideas for how we can offset whatever additional might be asked in August. We think that we can offset the majority of those costs just through restructuring efforts, again, kind of shaving back anywhere where we might be able to rein in some costs. So we feel pretty good about that.
Commissioner Waters.
So in regards to solid waste, streets, and sewer, I know I've mentioned it to the city manager before on trying to put those in the category of hazardous pay. You know, what if we did move those up to hazardous pay, what would that look like as far as increasing their salaries to make sure sewers hazardous pay, streets, and solid waste?
It's actually not at our discretion. It's at Kentucky Public Pension Authority's discretion. And they would have to speak to that, but from my experience with them, I think it would be unlikely that we would be successful getting that reclassified. You have to submit job descriptions to them and that they make the determination.
And so the $2,000 per employee would apply to solid waste, streets, police, and sewer?
Yes, it would. And so what we are sharing with you is that we would come back in August with some additional funding for those key areas where we're facing.
Beyond the 2,000.
Mhm, that is correct. But our hope would be at that time we would also be able to present to you some significant ways to offset that cost so that it wouldn't be such a significant additional cost request.
And you can see then updated numbers here to see if that $2,000 has had any effect on people leaving.
Yeah, we can provide that, absolutely. There's not a lot of time between now and August, and usually you look at turnover in a 12-month period. But certainly we could see if it's moving in a better direction.
Okay. Thanks, Kelsey. Next, planning and community development.
All right, we'll go through mine.
Welcome back.
So a comparison of our previous actual expenditures relative to the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024, going back to 2021, the actual expenditures were just a little over 550,000, 22, 624,000, and then budget expenditures for 23, then 1.1. That jump, one of the largest things that, well, probably two large things that will explain that jump in the last year. One of them is moving the parking operations, comes out of my budget, and then obviously our comp plan and development code rewrite. Those are both significant chunks out of my sort of discretionary spending, if you will. Staffing level as of March 24th, 7 full-time folks. So you can see here how much that proposed $2,000 flat COLA would impact my particular department budget. And so, as I mentioned, what I kind of refer to as the only two line items I really have that are what I would refer to as discretionary. Most of everything else in my budget is either personnel related or very direct operational costs. So I've color coded here the green items. Some of them are grant matches, public input, which is frankly speaking ky.com, which is the city's engagement hub, and then the community engagement DEI report, which I believe is money budgeted for engaging some of the results and the implementation suggestions from both the African American context report and then I believe probably what we'll learn from our DEI audit. So those are those things that in my budget really we can choose whether to do or not. But we have, generally speaking, over the last several years, we've always, the CLG grants are a wonderful tool, and they're fairly, compared with some of our other grant programs, fairly inexpensive. The blue are what I consider operational expenses that we really kind of have to do. The bottom four are all related to our role in funding the Planning Commission and those board members and attorneys. And then the blue electrical inspector, that is our arrangement that you may recall with the county to perform those electrical inspections. So, and as I mentioned, of the big item, the red one, comp plan and ordinance update, in there as well. Other services line item, this is the one other line item I have that has some degree of discretion. I have showed our abandoned property program that we've requested funding for $24,000 for this year. Really exciting to finally get that off ground level. We're going to be meeting in the morning actually to officially, I think, have our committee per the ordinance bless the first several properties. I emailed those to you all, I think, some weeks ago. Jordan in my office did a fantastic job late last week of getting the web page for that up. So we'll be putting some social media posts out there and learning as we go, and hopefully that works really well. So that's what we've started with as a placeholder to ask for that, and we'll see how quickly, hopefully, if we're lucky, we go through that funding. FirstNet is cell phone related, mowing in the top. I've also got as an operational expense. That's when we have to cite folks for yards and we end up spending money on our mowing contractor. We hope to recoup those for sending the property owners bills. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. The only other items there which are not actually color-coded on this are structure boarding and demolitions. I would generally consider these basically operational expenses, but to some degree you could choose how much to really spend on them. The structure boarding varies from year to year. Some years we may pay to board one or two things, other years there may be a few more. It is not hard to get to $4,000 on boarding, an old home with a lot of windows and doors. Demolitions, under my time at the city until this past budget year, we really hadn't done demolitions. It used to be a much more regular expense out of the planning department. And I think for a number of years, philosophically, from the Board of Commissioners and city managers at the time, and myself, we hadn't focused on that. And some of that was because we looked through some better alternatives to save some of that housing stock. Because as a general rule, destroying housing stock isn't what we need to do. But there are some properties that have reached beyond the pale and are really attractive nuisances and safety issues. And so we've tried to budget an appropriate amount to allow us to at least get 2, maybe 3 of those if we're fortunate in a year. We were able to fund this year 3 demolitions, 2 of which were ones that were on my plan list. Another one you all may recall was a large house fire on 4th Street. That was a totally unplanned expense, but a necessary emergency demolition. So, as I mentioned, the one other large item within my department budget is that contracted cost for parking operations, for LAS parking, for our on-street enforcement, and management of the parking garage. So we budget for the entire amount, but I know Alicia also budgets in the revenue side for a guess at how much we're going to get. I think she guessed almost exactly right with that $75,000. Right now, it'll be interesting to see this next quarter how much those revenues begin to go up since we've started ticketing, and then we're seeing from the work we've done in the garage, more people and some of these projects that are getting done downtown that are wanting spaces. So right now, the first quarter of this calendar year, we brought in $18,990. So you multiply that out, and that gets us, if it were to not change or not increase, right at that 75,000 mark, actually. But as I said, there's every reason to believe that to some degree we should be able to improve those numbers in terms of revenue, as I've mentioned before, because at the least the goal is to have that garage financially sustainable if possible. Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Does that mean no?
Now we've entered the upside down. Questions?
Do you feel like you have enough inspectors?
I do currently. We've been able to keep up. And obviously our work with the county with electrical inspection program has worked really well. They're down a man right now, and I know that's been a challenge for them to replace the second inspector. So fingers crossed that they're able to do that, but I think our staffing levels are appropriate right now.
Commissioner Thompson?
I think the last time this was asked was Commissioner Waldridge, so and it was several months ago. Can we have an update on a couple of the around here kind of properties that are borderline major nuisances? Old YMCA, just throw that one out there. Other places like that. Are there plans to move forward with regard to any other actions with those properties?
I'd have to know which exact properties you're asking about. You mentioned the old Y,
Right.
old Y.
The old Y, yeah.
And that one, I think the only thing I can offer is that we are still in
litigation,
which ties my
Schedule an
hands.
update on what's the list, the abandoned property list that you do every year?
So as part of our
Maybe
urban
that-
abandoned
but
properties
schedule
ordinance,
an update with the
a
VOC.
lot of those properties
in June.
are on that, and so we send those lists. My initial list goes out at the end of the year, and then the final list I send to finance in June. So that'll be going out, and that one property and probably a lot of the other ones you're thinking of are likely included in that list.
Are we allowed to? This is for Solicitor Ross. are we allowed to provide some type of, non-occupational abandonment, fee or tax? Because I know some of these buildings and properties are owned by perhaps trusts that are out of state and they could care less about, these things, but perhaps that could.
So, I'm not sure where you're going, Eric. We have, numerous tools at our disposal. We're utilizing some of them, like the abandoned property, the
Right. higher
tax rate. It loses, I think, some effectiveness after a certain amount of time. So we have been trying to think outside the box, but I understand what you're asking, and I can look and see if there's any new outside of the box ideas out there. But inside of the box, we're doing pretty much everything we can.
Once they don't pay I was looking through the abandoned property list that you gave us, that they hadn't paid certain fees and assessments and taxes. How long do we normally wait as a city before we, move for, foreclosure?
It has to be worth the amount of time and effort that we're going to spend on it. We have to get back enough money to also to make up for, where we are in the line of taxes. So we have a little bit of a formula that we use for foreclosures. We have brought those back in-house.
Okay.
So we are working our way through some right now, but you don't want to go after the small ones, obviously.
Right.
So it just depends on the property, but I'm happy to get you some numbers on how we're doing with that. We're doing really well.
How does that affect commercial properties? Like, for example, I'll use Eastwood Shopping Center, for example, that is less than 50%, full. Is there a method by which we can, because again, I think there may be owners of certain properties that don't generally care. They're just sitting on the property hoping that a Walmart will come in and buy them or something. I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? That is tough. And, well, you mentioned Eastwood Shopping Center, and they while they do have some vacancies, they're also, as you all know, have been recent attempts. So I think that owner might be a little more active than we're aware about trying to get tenancy, particularly in the old Sears building. Some of our others, it's similar to our other problems. If you have an owner that's out of state,
right.
There's some of the properties that we're all probably thinking of that I've wondered over the years if they're not serving as some sort of tax shelter for somebody,
right.
which makes it hard.
Right.
And back to Laura's comments about making some calculations about when we do and do not venture into foreclosure. That's what has resulted in the new program, so that if we're going to spend money on foreclosures, we at least have a sense of confidence that at the end of the deal, it's going to somebody that's going to do something productive with it. Because what you hate to do, and I can think of one example early in my tenure where I don't think we were foreclosing, but somebody else that was a long time problem house, and we were in the middle of trying to do some code enforcement activity on them, had to pause because they were in foreclosure, and we were like, oh, great. Well, it went from one not great owner to another just as not great owner, and it was like, well, glad we didn't pay for that.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Everybody good?
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
This is my last presentation for the evening, yay. I'm really happy. Okay, so obviously I'm presenting the finance department budget. It's very straightforward. Our expenditures remain roughly between $550 and $650 between actual and budgeted. We don't have a whole lot of fluff at all in our budget. As a matter of fact, when I get to that slide, I'll show you. So we have current staffing cost of a little over $458,000. Our COLA would be about a little over $13,000. Our budget is 79% payroll because, as you guys all know, when you're talking about finance, you need people. You need folks that do that type of work. There's not a whole lot of getting around that. So all of our other operating expenditures are a little over $128,000, and that represents the other 21% of our budget. And We budget for and pay for the printing and the postage for property tax bills, 13,000. Our PVA's assessment we get from the PVA, that costs us $40,000 annually, and that's for the tax bill assessments that we use to mail the tax bills out with. Our accounting software that not only finance but all of city government, including sewer, uses, that's a little over 33,000, roughly 33. We got that new property tax software, which has been a godsend. It's been a really good program for us in a number of ways. Maintenance, so we paid for the property tax software in fiscal year 23. So in 24, we start the maintenance part of the contract. So a little over $9,500, and then we've got another $7,000 where it's the web hosting of the tax software, because people can go online and pay their tax bills. It's actually a very nice program for folks to use online as well. They can pay with a credit card, and they can actually walk up to the counter and pay with a credit card now as well, where we were never able to do that before. And then of course we have our occupational and business tax software maintenance, and that's around $3,000 a year, and that's a fairly old program. So hopefully in the future we'll be able to bring new programs that will get us updated with some of those enabling environment issues, suggestions that I know the commission's interested in. That one was really quick. So, do y'all have any questions for me on the finance budget? No, it's easy. Nope. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Get ready.
Kids. Parks and Rec.
Oh, it's up here. All right. All right. Parks and Recreation.
And historic sites.
And historic sites. We got $3.7 million as our total budget. About 62% of that is personnel, and then about 38%, the rest of it is operating costs. So that's it. Have any questions?
Yeah. I like it, John.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go through this briefly. There's 4 or 5 slides, quite a bit of information. I won't read it word for word. If you have any questions, please let me know. As I mentioned, personnel cost is about 62% of the total budget for this year at 3.7, close to 3.8 million. That includes the golf course. Total budgeted personnel cost is just about 2.3 million. We have 12 full-time employees in the Parks Department, and then we have what kind of sets us apart in personnel compared to a lot of departments, which I'm sure you know, is we have a buku of part-time and seasonal staff. A large portion of those are at the aquatic center, lifeguards, attendants, concession workers, admissions. And then another large hunks are in our athletics, scorekeepers, umpires, concession workers out at the fields and things like that. So we have a lot, but some of them may work 5 hours a week or 3 hours a week. And then we have maintenance techs and other things that do work longer hours. In this budget, we've increased most of our part-time and seasonal staff by $2 an hour to try to help us remain competitive in the market, which we've kind of talked about a lot tonight. The main ones seeing the biggest increase are our maintenance techs and our lifeguards. We've also added park rangers last year, and we're trying to boost that now just to try to help with some additional security in the parks. It's being more eyes out there on weekends and evenings when park staff is not as plentiful. Also umpires in the youth sports world. I just looked at an article on CNN. A father just punched an umpire at a game somewhere and just glanced at it. So it's been harder and harder to find umpires and good quality.
It's going to be a
umpires.
tighter strike zone after that.
Yeah, it's going to be a tighter strike zone. So we've tried to increase there to try to keep those there. And no employees making less than $10 per hour. Most are around 12 to 14 of our part-time and seasonals. Just 2 years ago, we were still at $7.25 for a lot of our part-time and seasonal. So we've made considerable headway. Sorry, that's kind of small. Golf course, $806,000 is our operating budget, and about $450 of that is payroll personnel. It's just some of the bigger expenses. That's not all the expenses. It's just kind of some of the bigger, more higher amount was heat, light, and power at the golf course. A lot of water being used for irrigation, and quite a bit of electricity to operate everything there at the golf course. Maintenance and repairs, aging equipment, highly specialized equipment. We're spending quite a bit of money there. Other services, outsourcing, electric and plumbing, golf cart repairs. Our golf carts are about 7 years old now, so they're kind of starting to see a lot of repairs to them. Irrigation is a continual expense. 18-hole buku of acres, trying to keep it all watered in low rain times is a challenge. And then agriculture is another one of our big expenses. That's the chemicals to keep it nice and green and no weeds, and mow grass about the shorter than that carpet right there. So, so that's some of our big expenses at the golf course. Parks administration. This is parks admin, so our administrative staff, but also Juniper Hill Park proper, minus the golf course and aquatic center. Other services is our civic rec, online reservation system, portable restrooms citywide, our Green Hill Cemetery allocation, and so on. Other materials, daily maintenance and facilities of grounds, park signage, volleyball court sand, playground mulch, those types of things. And then equipment, some snow plow for gator, weed eater, odds and ends stuff there. So that's kind of our main budget line item, $793,000 there, and then $570 in payroll. That's 5 full-time staff that comes out of there. So my salary and our administrative staff, as well as our Juniper Hill maintenance, is there. Sports, some of the bigger line items there. Clothing, $30,000. That's our uniforms. Food, concession inventory at $15,000. Other materials, $40,000. Athletic field dirt, infield mixes, diamond dry, odds and end things for the actual. We've got 11 baseball fields, so it takes a lot of dirt to keep those in shape. And then equipment, field drags, rakes, and edgers, and odds and ends. Aquatic center, $466,000 and change. Operating budget, $269,000 of that is in personnel. It takes a lot to operate the aquatic center, a lot of part-time and seasonal. Heat, light, and power, obviously a large water volume use there and electric use, $75,000. Drugs and lab supplies, it's just a line item, it's what it's called. It's where our pool chemicals for water treatment comes out of. Concession inventory there, $40,000. Other materials, lifeguard safety items, rescue tubes, CPR items, first aid kits, things of that nature. Downtown, Dolly Graham and Fort Hill, $308,000. Operating budget, just shy of $200,000 in payroll there. Maintenance and repairs, $17,500. Other services, $25,000. Other services, when we're outsourcing repairs beyond what we can take care of, if we've got to contact a plumber and an electrician, that's kind of basically where that's coming out of. Our contract mowing, specialized servicing for the splash pad at Dolly comes out of that as well. Other materials, interpretive signage at Riverview, playground mulch, picnic tables and grills, irrigation, and so on. Equipment at downtown, looking for a new zero-turn mower. We have aging mowers at most of our parks, and we've been trying every year to 1 or 2 mowers every year, if possible, to try to cycle out the old things. Lakeview, $52,000 in operating costs. Most of that's payroll, $36,000. Maintenance and repairs, $2,500. Other materials, new safety guards for the fence and other odds and ends at Lakeview. Museum and historic sites, $250,000 operating cost, $164,000 in payroll. The rentals there, $30,500. That's the museum storage facility on the Wilkinson. That's an annual rent cost. Other services, very similar to in other areas: outsourcing, research, artifact, historic preservation, collection safety. We've got some flooding repairs, some flooding issues in the basement, so we've added additional budget items there for work on those, and then other items to a very old building. Forestry. Tree maintenance, this is where all the right-of-way trees in the entire city, as well as all of our park trees in parks. $75,000 for tree maintenance, and then $30,000 in other services for the downtown tree canopy plan. Cove Spring, maintenance and repairs, other services, again, things we contract out, new interpretive signage for up on the park, dumpsters, things like that we can't handle in-house. Other materials, bridge construction at the 3D archery range, kiosk repair, wetlands, and so on. And my last slide, Capitol View Park, $296,000, payroll $190, maintenance and repairs to fields and dugouts, other services, again, outsourcing a lot of repairs down there, other materials, infield mixes, drainage repairs, also a lot of our mountain bike trails, materials and supplies comes out of there as well. And then lastly, East Frankfort Park, 275, just shy. Operating costs and payroll 196, and other services, again, outsourcing, building materials. I want to do some dugout repairs there and some restroom upgrades and repairs the best we can. Partial replacement for the dog park fence and other materials, odds and ends, and then equipment, a specialized tiller for ball fields to better churn up the dirt and make it a better playable surface. So we have 10 different budget line items for almost each and different park, and they're all kind of unique in their own way. So I know that was a lot in several there, but just kind of gave you the highlights, and we'll take any questions.
Well, you know I got a bunch of them. So, Sean, first of all, thanks for all that. I'm doing the quick math here on about 17 different pieces of paper, but it appears that we're at about if you take Juniper Hills Aquatic Park and Juniper Hills Golf Course, that we are at about $1.295 million in annual expenses. And if I do the super quick math, which will always get me in trouble, it looks like we're bringing in about $700,000 on those two entities. And
that's about right. Yeah, the golf course brings in around $400,000, and the pool between $400,000 and $500,000, depending on. Both of them depend on weather and issues and things like that.
Right.
But, yeah.
So annually, just so I can get this in my head, annually, Juniper Hills Golf Course and the Aquatic Center, we run at a loss of about $500,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember, and I don't because I was not a part of the board then, but do you remember the initial cost of the pool construction?
It was right around $6 million, just shy of 5.7, 5.8 in that neighborhood.
So
probably about 10 million or better in today's terms.
In today's terms, yeah. So so we're spending about 10 to 15% of whatever the cost is that we've spent on those two entities, and of course Juniper Hills Golf Course, 7 years of inflation, but we're spending about 10 to 15% of what the cost of that was annually just for maintenance of those entities, correct? To maintain them.
And the maintenance has gone up, obviously.
Right, sure. So I guess my question is, are we as a city, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, are we as a city, like every other community, we just lose money on parks? I mean, it's just what you do?
Most. I don't know. I've been involved in KRPS, Kentucky Recreation Park Society, for almost my entire career. I've been on the board, still am. I know many of the directors, and there's not any that I know that actually city or county public parks departments that actually make money.
That's my next question, because
I'm not saying there isn't any out there.
But you walked into my next question, which is, are there municipalities that are going to third-party run types of park systems where there is a fee structure and third party that's involved in the personnel and upkeep and things of that nature?
In part, that I'm aware of. I don't know of any that's just said that they either don't have a city-operated park department, or they've partnered with somebody, or
Right.
they've worked out an arrangement to operate certain things. But I don't know any that have just totally operated their park department on a third-party basis.
Have those entities found that to be a profitable endeavor that you know of?
Not that I know of. I really couldn't speak truthfully to that to know for sure.
Okay. And why do we have what's our cost of the $56,000 in Lakeview Park?
About 38,000 of that is payroll. Then the rest of it is just maintenance, heat, light, and power, water usage, and
can you explain why we are?
So we use the fields.
yeah, we use the 4 fields at Lakeview for our programs, and we have an MOA with the county.
Okay.
And that we've signed 2 or 3 years ago. It was before that as well. That we maintain the facility and we run our programs there. The county doesn't run programs there. It's just in a county park, and so we operate not all of our programs, but some of our programs are operated there. And if there's any capital improvements made to Lakeview, if I'm thinking it correctly in the MOA, we split the cost with the county.
Well, that's
Not
nice.
not daily operation, but if we put up new lights, they're supposed to pay half of that, if they agree on it, obviously.
Are they?
They're in discussions for that,
Okay.
but they've got their own master plan, and it's in question how the city will still be involved with Lakeview as part of their master plan. If when they redesign their fields, will we still have access to them? That's still to be answered.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Matt.
Who is on, at the golf course, you said we had, how many full-time employees?
2 at the golf course.
At the golf course, it'd be a pro and, or
Oh, I'm sorry, the pro. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking golf maintenance. There's 2 in golf maintenance, and then you have the golf pro.
Okay.
That runs the pro shop. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So when I'm looking at personnel services for the golf course, you got the payroll 451,120. I'm assuming that also includes seasonals
Yes.
as well.
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when I'm looking at 150,000 for heat, light, and power,
Yeah.
obviously I'm assuming that's just for the building itself. Obviously, we're not heating, lighting. What do you use power, electricity for the sprinklers?
Yes.
To
Yeah.
push
A
the
lot of the
motors?
heat light man. We're actually working with Katie and Public Works to kind of narrow down exactly, not just at the golf course, but parks wide, the heat, light, power, energy uses and exactly where they are and what meters
Okay.
are what and whatever. But a lot of that is water usage, irrigation.
Okay.
Yeah, and that can kind of vary wildly. If we have a real wet year, obviously we don't use as much water.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? One question, I know in our Parks Master Plan, I think we were, if we want to do anything in the specific parks, we need to do our own mini master plan for those parks.
That would be preferable,
When,
especially if you're doing a major project.
I'd say East Frankfort Park, when might you be considering doing a strategic plan for each individual park? And in what order?
Oh, well,
Well, that's another.
yeah, it's kind of another, probably
conversation.
East Frankfort would be our
But-
first.
So we're not budgeting anything yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
Keeping it in the budget conversation, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Pickens, could I ask for you to get something for each of us? Can you provide for us the amounts, if you can find it in budgetary expenditures, that we have spent in the last, say, 10 years on Capitol View Park?
Yeah.
Is that possible to do?
Actually, I think, you've given me an estimate. Since we've been using Capitol View Park, we've made over $2 million worth of investment there at the park.
That's
Since
right.
we started leasing it from the state.
Oh.
I remember we were talking about
Yeah.
that before.
I gotta believe
That's about right.
I gotta believe that since 82, 83, that those dollars have gotta be, significantly more, you know, with inflation, but thank you, that
Yeah,
helps.
I've got a list from, I think, in the 80s, and it may not be a complete list, but it's got the major items from the get-go of when the park was open and what the cost was.
I guess my one question, I guess, would go sort of piggyback on what the mayor had just brought up, is strategic plans for each park, and also strategic plans. Eventually, you know, we need to start talking about an indoor facility that we're looking at, you know, and what the future looks like for Frankfort in an indoor facility, because we don't know what the county's doing with theirs, because they don't even know what they're doing with theirs. So, you know, we can't just sit around. You know, I know I was told by previous directors that, you know, we didn't build indoor facilities because we didn't want to compete with the YMCA, and that just was not good enough. And obviously we see where we are now. Though we're working with the YMCA to try to get stuff up and running, I think that we need to be future focused and forward focused in what we're doing for indoor facilities, looking at Capitol View Park and making that, you know, a strategic place for turf fields and things. So we need to make sure these ideas have come up, and I just don't want them to slip through the cracks as though we're not talking about them anymore. And then also what that pool, though it's a huge expense, what does that pool access look like moving forward? Yes, we're working with Kentucky State. It has been a slow process working with Kentucky State, but we're still working on that. But what does that look like for the future with Kentucky State or without? And what are we doing to move forward in parks or working with the school system in that? So that just needs to be in one of those, I guess, strategic plans.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, Kenny.
Last but not least.
Kenny, come on, save us some money here. Come on.
I like
Save
Kenny.
us
He's
some money,
always like,
Kenny. Come on.
we spend our own money, we make our own money.
Yeah, not really. So, just to get started, personnel, I'll let y'all get going there a little bit. So, you'll see a little bit of an increase this year, and it's more, you know, the past couple of years, we've been down a couple staff, namely one of our engineers. We've been contracting those services out. We did bring on a new staff engineer this year, and we also have a couple other positions that we hope to fill this year. Now that we have our administrative staff almost fully staffed, we should be able to get the rest of our positions filled now. So that, along with the COLA, is the increase that you're seeing there in the 24 budget. Administration, which is where just a lot of our capital stuff comes out of, and our heat, light, power, those things that our consumables that you use, not our capital budget. We've knocked it down significant this year. It was down to 3.8 million for that. For our plant and lab, we're gonna keep that pretty well the same. You can see our budget went up last year. We're gonna expend more in the plant. This is more of our repairs, our maintenance and repairs budget. As you know, our plant is aging. It's almost 40 years old now. It's actually over 40 years old now. So, you know, obviously things break down. We're getting more of that, which is why you're going to see in our capital budget, we're going to be looking at what we do in the future for a plant expansion. Pump maintenance, 202 for this next year. Collections, that is not, we're trying to collect debt. That is our collector systems that are out. Our pump stations are, we're not our pump stations, all the lines that are underground. That budget is 152 for this year, for a total of just under 4.5 million. Our revenue is expected to be fairly the same.
It's a go home.
It's not.
It's dead.
Do not
Must
pass
have
by,
put
do
it
not
somewhere
collect
different.
$200.
Sean broke it.
That's better.
Take,
Zach, can you move it ahead?
take it out of Sean's pay.
There we go.
Yeah.
So our revenue is, should be fairly close to what it has been, about 12 million. Personnel cost, you saw, we've talked about that already. Our revenue obviously is enough to pay our bills, and partially fund what we're going to have in capital investments. The best part is we will have 2 bonds coming off in 24 and 26. That will account for an additional about $1.2 to $1.3 million a year that we'll have for capital investments. But as you know, a couple of months ago, we talked about our future forward plan. We've got about $75 million in projects that we're going to be doing over the next few years. So obviously, KIA loans are going to be a significant portion of where we're going to fund that gap for our future. It worked that time. So our capital assets, you can see right now, this year's budget for our debt payments, basically $4.4 million, that's KIA and our bond payments that we have, along with just our operating cost. You know, our payroll is right just over 3.5. I know. Payroll's about 3.5, so these are operating costs. So by the time you look at just what our normal operation and maintenance costs, we're in the $7 to $8 million range. These are our capital projects just for our admin. We have several projects that are trying to renovate. We've been trying to renovate our locker rooms for the past several years, and our guys are really looking forward to getting this project done, and I've put it on my own plate this year to make sure we get that done. Plant and lab, we look at capital projects about $9.1 million this year. That will be we just got done completing our bar screen project. We have a UV system that's going in to replace our ozone system. That's a $5 million project. And then we're also going to be doing our plant study. That'll be a $2.5 million project once we get that under contract. And then we have a couple smaller projects that will be going in as well this year. Pump maintenance, we have a lot of projects going on. Our Prevention Park pump station, which is where Farmville will tie in, that's a huge project. But our biggest project is our East Frankfort interceptor, which actually is in that's in collections. But that is a $30 million project just by itself. We don't know exactly how much inflation is going to kick that up, and so we're kind of just waiting to see what those bids come in after we bid it out here in a few months. We also have the Paddocks pump station. We know that development's kind of slowed down just a little bit because they're looking at some different things, but we're ready to go out to bid for that project. So as soon as that we get the green light that we're ready to go, we're going to go ahead and get our pump station installed for that. So we have about $12 million in projects this year for pumps and another $20 million for our collection system. The reason why you see, I say one project is a $30 million project, the way that it's set up is this project is going to be through multiple years. So we've only budgeted about half of it this year, and we'll budget the other half of it next year. So as you see these budgets come through, that's why one project in collections is $30 million. Our budget's only $20 million. That's because for the East Frankfort, it's going to be 24 to 30 months total construction. So we have to spread that out over the years, and we have to budget it per KIA, making sure that we show each year budgeted for that. A little bit of detail, just some small items. Safety equipment, we budget $20,000 every year. KIA payments, $1.7 million for that. Energy modifications, we try every year to look at a way, what can we do to reduce our energy costs. We make sure we budget money to improve those. We've done LED lighting over the years, VFDs on some of our pumps so that it ramps up at a slower speed, and so you don't have that inrush current, which causes additional fees on our electricity. Paving, that's just an annual budget line item that we have. We don't always use it, but for some of these projects, especially when we do in-house and we do street cuts, it's always good to have that there. Then you can see that we're renovating the locker rooms and then security upgrades. Security is always an issue, and we're always needing to make sure that we keep that up to par. For the plant, you got the sampler. It's a capital expense. Due to the environment, obviously sewer, we have sewer gases. We usually lose a sampler once a year, so we always budget for a sampler. And then the lab truck, we are going to replace that this year. Then we got the emergency repairs at the plant. We budget $200,000 every year. This last year we went over that budget. But with what we've been doing, with the capital investments that we've been doing, we expect that to be under that $200,000 this year. The facilities plan, 1.25, it'll be a 2-year project because we'll have to do a facilities plan, and then once we do the facilities plan, then we'll go into the design and upgrades of what the plant will look like for the future. UV, and then oxidation ditch. That's just, if we have to take an oxidation ditch down to clean it out, unfortunately our grit system does not get all the grit out. It's doing a better job since we just rebuilt it, but it still doesn't capture everything. Where we're a CSO community, we get literally a couple feet of grit that will be in an oxidation ditch. So we, anywhere from 10 to 12 20-yard dumpsters of grit that we'll pull out of that. So obviously that's a large construction item, so we budget for that. Class A biosolids, this is part of our future forward. We're in the design phase of that to make sure that we are ready for PFAS. We still have not got, they're looking at clean water right now, drinking water, but they're saying that our limits are probably going to be about the same. And right now, the limits they're throwing out are 4 parts per trillion, which is going to be a microscopic amount of PFAS that's left, and so that we can discharge. So there's going to have to be a lot of different improvements over the years coming up once they pass this and get our final EPA rolling. The scariest thing is that they're trying to determine whether or not they want to make it a hazardous waste, which will be even worse for us because then we have to look at how do we dispose of that without, causing more environmental impact. Then the last part is Arc Flash. That is just an assessment. As our plant is 40 years old, Arc Flash is becoming a more prominent safety concern, and we need to start doing an Arc Flash assessment on the plant, the different equipment, and the electrical components that go along with that.
What are the major differences between the pages? Like you total up to 9 million, and then the next page you total up 11 million.
The last one that we were just going over, that is just the plant itself.
Okay.
This next one is going to be the pump maintenance. So like we talked about the different totals that we had, this is just a more detailed list of those totals. They're the same totals, it just, this gives the detail of where we got to those totals.
One's plant and lab, one's pump maintenance, and then the last one is
collections.
collections. Okay, and that
Yep.
includes the interceptor.
Yes.
Okay.
So for plant maintenance equipment, we're going to budget $200,000. Emergency repairs at $100,000. Then we have our prevention park pump station. I won't go into each total. Miami Trails, which is currently going on right now over in Indian Hills. If you talk to the people over there, it's all torn up right now. Once the project's done, then the pavement will be restored. Hopefully, I drove through there last week and it's got some rough spots in there.
Yeah.
So I feel their pain, but hopefully once it gets done, it'll all have new paving and everything. Then we have the Fort Boone pump station. This is the last of our early action items. This is behind the old Ash building across from Buffalo Trace. That one, this is the project that unfortunately has never ended. This started in 2007 and we went through 3 different contracts, and hopefully this one we'll get this one knocked out and we'll be done with it on this one. Capitol Avenue pump station separation, it's another future forward project. The Paddocks pump station, the Brick Miro pump station, that is for both sanitary and for the flood station. So we're going to bring, currently our existing sanitary stations on the outside of the flood wall, we're going to bring that on the inside. Once we go into flood mode for that station, it has to pump to the flood pump station, and so all of that gets discharged into the river during a flood. So by bringing it on the inside of the flood station, that will cut out about 60% of our CSO outfalls for the year. So that's going to be a huge thing for our future forward, for our long-term control plan, and that also comes with a $10.75 million grant. And we are the only state that's not connected to a coastline that was awarded a BRIC grant last year. So that was a huge project, a huge win for us, and so that's one of our major projects that we have coming up. Old Lawrenceburg Road Pump Station, that obviously it's a can station. I don't know if you know what a can station is, but basically you have a spiral stairwell that goes down about 45 feet, and you have essentially a metal can that's underneath there that houses all the pumps and equipment, and you have a wet well that sits next to it. These have typically been a very dangerous situation because gases can build up there very easily. So we're going to convert it to a conventional above ground pump station with this project, and should help eliminate and make a better pump station for us. Then transfer switches and overhaul the Jim Beam station. It's just dealing with distillery waste. Sometimes, you know, it creates a lot more gases, and so we have to deal with that. Silver Lake pump station replacement that will be relocated in the park. It will help serve that area a little bit better, and then SCADA for the pump stations as well. And last but not least, our collection system, our manhole rehab is an annual allocation. Broadway Phase 1 and 2, those are to address rock sewers. Our sewer rehabilitation, that's all in-house projects that we do. We allocate that every year. Our East Frankfort Interceptor, that's our $30 million project. So you got $15 million there for this year, and we have $15 budgeted for next year. Capitol Avenue Force Main and the Dolly Graham Interceptor, those are rehab projects. CSO Ewing Street repair, that's just an outfall that's not working correctly. Inverness is a small sewer extension that we're going to be doing. Lareland's the same way. 4th Street siphon is a study. We're trying to figure out how to get more capacity through that siphon. Paiute is a common lateral. We have 4 or 5 houses that are having continual issues and are all on one common lateral, so we're going to do a sewer extension for that. P Ridge Pump Station, that's more of a flooding concern. We've got a lot of water coming off the hill. Duncan Road is to provide capacity for distillery and for the industrial park down there. And then Forest Village siphons a long-term SSO that we're dealing with. This is for design, and we're working on making sure that we get that SSO taken care of. And then CSO modifications and emergency repairs. I know it's a lot and very fast.
Sorry that you're up and running.
I'm used to it. Everything runs downhill and it comes to us.
That was, any questions about the sewer budget?
Yes, in your location, I know that, you know, with our world now, we're having more rain and, you know, flooding and things. Where are we on the safety part of where you're located there on the river, as far as floods that could be increasing? Are we thinking future forward on the rain that could increase for that? And also the erosion of the bank system there around where you're at in that corner. Has there been any testing on any of the erosion on how the water is moving and things on that for the security of that plant?
As far as flooding concerns, there is a certain point at a certain level that the plant has to shut down. We've only hit it once since I've been here, in the 9 years that I've been here. But the 76 flood, or not the 76, 79 flood, 78 flood, the plant was under construction at that time, and it got up to the front door. So yes, it is a concern. Part of our plant study that we're going to be working at, we'll be looking at the entire site, what needs to be done, and our goal in that whole project is to look at 50 years. What do we need for 50 years? Is it going to be, you know, bank control, you know, flood state, you know, what we need totally 100%, so that once we get the design done, we shouldn't have to worry about it. We know, then I have to worry about financing and getting the money to pay for it all.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. That was my concern.
You just looked right at me like you knew something was coming.
Yes, Kyle.
How is Farmdale affecting your bottom line?
It is not. It'll be 3 to 5 years before they're tied in anyway. We already have our interlocal agreement signed with them. So once they come in, it will be simply getting a monthly paycheck from them for their services.
Second question is, all of the work that was added, and I know that we had talked about the pump station that was put on the west side of town, over by Leonard Wood, that is that able to provide enough sewer access if there were to be an industrial park along 127?
Yes, we actually had several meetings with the city manager about making sure that that capacity was built in. We increased the size of that station so that we would be prepared for that if it was to come in.
I think we actually increased it to where you could add an extra turbine or whatever, the engine or whatever.
Yeah, we added an extra force main.
Yeah, force main.
And so it increased the capacity from 3.25 million up to 14 at full capacity build out if we wanted to.
And that would cover an entire industrial park in that area?
And more.
And more?
Yep.
Yes, Commissioner Unger.
Anytime we talk about sewer, I like to remind people that those flushable wipes aren't flushable.
Yes, ma'am. You are exactly right. They are not
Just want to
flushable.
put that out there.
And hair.
I guess that could relate to budget.
Because of replacement pieces.
Yes.
It was a
Yes,
huge
Commissioner
expense.
Mann.
What is the biosolids? I remember when we took a tour the first time, you were telling me there's multiple ways that you all can sell product. Essentially, you can turn it into. Is that what that is? Upgrading the system to where you can convert it into a.
Yes, our initial design is for a dryer, so it would dry it, which creates a Class A biosolid, which is unrestricted. So at that point, you could give it away as a soil supplement to farmers, to greenhouses, anyone who really, golf courses, anybody who wanted to just add fertilizer that was free, basically, to their yard, to their farm, whatever. But with PFAS coming down, we don't know what those regulations are going to look like long term. We've seen some, as of right now, the only good solids that they're saying is that will get rid of PFAS for sure is an incinerator, but we don't know. We have to wait until we get those regulations. Once we get it built, we already have a incinerator design spec in there so that we can add it fairly easily, but we just have to wait until those final regulations come out, and that way we know. We would love to be able to sell it for a profit, but we just don't know. The biggest thing we're looking at right now, we hope that we're ahead of the game, and so we would be a regional facility for all biosolids, and so we would, instead of other municipalities taking it to landfills, land farms, and other places, we would hope that we would be able to get it and then that's where our revenue stream would come in to pay for that, would come from.
Good thinking.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have one action item tonight, a first reading, sponsored by Commissioner Wong.
An ordinance accepting a portion of West Ridge Drive as a public street. This ordinance officially accepts the dedication of that portion of West Ridge Drive between US 127 South and Vandalay Drive for public use and maintenance.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve this first reading.
My apologies.
Any discussion?
The two women were laid
Not
back,
being-
ready to go to the next thing.
Any discussion?
None. I have nothing to say about this.
Okay, no discussion. Please note
Men are
that.
feisty and ready to move.
Please note, yes.
No, okay, great. So, no discussion on this. We'll have that on the tentative agenda for May.
I knew it was coming.
All right. Any other tentative besides budget? Lots of budget. Is there anything else? Maybe, right? Seeing none. Any unfinished or new business before we go into executive session?
Mayor, as we go into executive session, Per KRS 61.8101B, deliberations on the future acquisition of real property related to the implementation of the downtown master plan when publicity would be likely to affect the value. Action may be taken in open session.
Second.
Okay, motion to go into executive session. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're now in executive session. Thank you all very much
Thank you
for your
guys.
patience.
Thank you.
In favor to go back in open session? Say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
All right, we're now back in open session and no action will be taken by the Board of Commissioners at this time.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, Commissioner May, second, Commissioner Waters. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Awesome.